Welcome, friends, to the good, the bad, and the Alpine. Welcome to our Formula 1 2025 season review on Motorsport 101. Alpine could also count as bad if possible. Hey everybody, welcome to episode 635 of Motorsport 101. I'm your neighbourhood friendly host, Dre Harrison. Glad you could join us. And the three of us are back together for the big one, the finale of season review season. And that is pulling up a warm cup of cocoa, pulling up in front of the fireplace and watching darts. No, sorry, reviewing the Formula 1 2025 season. The big one, the one we're all here for, the one you want us to talk about the most. And it's that yearly tradition again. As I said, I'm Dre Harrison, glad you could join us. And joining me as ever is, first of all, I can't stand him because he's been flaunting Air Griffies in front of my face this evening. He's a bastard. It's Cameron Buckley. Hello, everybody.
Yes, they're on the screen. I've been trying for these for a long time, and now I have them. But you know what we no longer have? Renault Power on the grid. It's that yearly time where I pour out a cup of eggnog and roast at least two of the works teams that are involved in Formula 1. And it's always the same two works teams, no less.
Yeah, this is becoming a bit of a yearly tradition in the worst possible sense. It's a bit like eating Brussels sprouts. It's a very acquired taste, at least in my household it is anyway. Fun fact, I'm the only person in my house that eats mince pies. It's like, every time they get bought in, it's like, who are you buying these for? It's just for me. Anyway.
I know who he is. He's me.
Oh, thank you. You bought me mince pies, a whole tray for myself. Anyway, also joining me, he's slightly smug because the Buffalo Bills got their revenge on the New England Patriots last week. It's RJ O'Connell. Hello, sir.
It was never in doubt.
Oh,
it was never, ever in doubt. You know, when I saw that we were down 21-0, I thought, nah, we got this. I actually was just about to be catatonic when I saw the scores updating. And then as I continued my first time candlepin bowling to celebrate another friend's birthday party because I feel weird about my own that recently passed, I was
Happy
just
birthday,
like, you know
RJ.
what? Maybe it's not too bad after all. Thank you. Maybe being the same age as the number of the famous Castrol Tom Supra isn't so bad.
As long as it's not the year 2000 Supra from Gran Turismo 3 A-Spec. It's also worth noting that the universe got you a birthday present in the death of the Kansas City Chiefs, as we know them.
I mean, we knew they were in trouble anyway.
Yeah, and then the game was probably over, and Patrick Mahomes blew out his knee.
Of course. The dynasty is dead. All I'm saying, RJ, is that if you don't make the Super Bowl this year, I'm going to destroy you on this podcast.
I know. I'm going to destroy myself if that doesn't happen.
Anything less than a Super Bowl, I will be committing murder.
And you know what the worst thing about it is? I'm probably going to have to follow that while I'm working on post-Rolex 24 stuff. Again!
Fun! Very fun. And happy birthday, my friend. He is now, he's 21 years old for the 15th time.
16th time in a row. Because when you're 21, it's the first time. When you're 22, it's the second time.
Of course. No, that's very true.
Rules.
He knows the rules. I used that to describe my mum's 60th last year, and I almost got thrown out of the house. Don't do it,
Christ.
Just
You're
like
the
that
man, Harrison. They would never told you that.
Thrown out of the house just like the Ferrari shirts.
I wouldn't try that at my boldest.
No, it is not. Listen, I have a Jamaican mother. All I'm saying is the reputation precedes them sometimes. That's all I will say. Places you can find us real quick before we get into the season review. We're on youtube.com/motorsport101. Oh, by the way, hope you've been enjoying the top 10 drivers of the year countdown shorts that have been coming up on YouTube, our Instagram page, Motorsport101 Pod, and our TikTok, M101 Podcast over the coming days. We don't really sprinkle them into the season reviews because I think it's kind of redundant to do that, so I just kind of do both if you like the written version. But I thought, hey, let's do a video countdown going into Christmas because that's fun, right? So yeah, by the time this goes out, it'll probably be about five or six of the way through. We'll have to wait and see. This is probably going to be a big episode, but check that out if you haven't already. youtube.com/motorsport101, M101 underscore podcast on TikTok, Motorsport 101 pod on Instagram. You can follow us on Twitter. It's Dre Harrison 101, C Buckley 917, and RJ O'Connell. Our show itself is at Motorsport underscore 101. You can check us out on our website, motorsport101.com, for all of our social details on there as well, including written versions from me of the F1 season, the MotoGP season, and if you really want to go back far enough, IndyCar too. Just check the season reviews tab on the blog section. It's all in there if you want to check those out already. By the time you've read this, part 2 of my written thoughts will also be out, covering Aston Martin, Racing Bulls, and Williams. So check that out if you haven't seen it already. And if you're really like us, you can check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/motorsport101. $5 gets you early access to all of our content. You can upgrade to the $10 tier to listen to these episodes live as they're being recorded, as a bunch of you are in the chat. We got Sock in here, we've got Raptor, Jason, Kira, I see Emma in here as well. This is one of the biggest turnouts for a pod recording I can remember in quite some time, so thank you everybody. I do hope you enjoy the show. Much appreciated. Yay for winter breaks, etc. Thank you very much for your ongoing and continued support. Give the gift of an M101 Patreon subscription this Christmas, because why not, right? No better time to support us than right now. Right, without further ado, let's get into our Formula 1 2025 season review.
It's over. It's over. The Formula 1 season is over, and now it's time to talk about how every team did, Dre.
It is indeed. Now, for those who are new here, because as I always say, every podcast is someone's first, we typically do these in reverse championship order, unless it's IndyCar, because they don't really do a team's championship, so we kind of just vibe that one out a little bit. But in Formula 1, we have a Constructors' Championship, so we do it in reverse Constructors' order, so you can probably guess who comes first here, and yep, to no one's surprise, it's Alpine. Just 22 points on the year in 10th place. I mean, it's worth pointing out, it's the best bottom-ranked F1 team in history. The previous record was Haas's 12 in 2023. It's been beaten here. Alpine got 22 on the year. It's something.
You are the best, worst team we've ever had.
It's beautiful. It's a great sentence. Pierre Gasly, and while I want to say Franco Colapinto, it would be rude of us not to mention Jack Doohan, who did take part for the first 6 races and was promptly fed into the garbage compactor. He was replaced by Franco Colapinto after 6 races. Head-to-head wise, Gasly 17.5 in qualifying and 13.8 up in races. Sprints are included in that, by the way. Gasly was 18th in the standings, Colapinto 20th, one of only 2 drivers who failed to score a point this year. The other one, of course, being the person he replaced, of course, Jack Doohan. Well, who else was it going to be, really?
Yes, Jack Doohan's been moved on to greener pastures. His own personal hell of Degner 1 Suzuka.
No, see. I just read the official press release covering those test days, and it didn't mention Jack Doohan, but it did mention a lot of the Australian driver in the number 3 and number 4 Kondo Racing Dallara Toyotas.
The son of an incredibly talented Australian with a limp.
Yeah. For those of you who may not be aware, because I want to go inside baseball for a second, because Jack Doohan is still technically under contract. As part of the Super Formula rookie test, he was contractually barred from speaking to the media, being photographed in official JRP photos, and the JRP could not mention his name in official statements recapping the event.
Ridiculous. That is completely stupid.
Well, completely stupid and incredibly fitting for the last participation of Renault as a works entity in Formula 1, at least for the foreseeable future. The first time we will be without their engines on the grid in one form or another, licensed or unlicensed, since 1989.
Yeah, it's sad in a sense. I mean, we talked about this a lot more last year when it was first announced to the world that this was going to be the last season that Alpine was going to be running their own power units, because as you may not know, they're switching to Mercedes gearboxes and powertrains as of 2026. It means the end of... well, it's not the end of Viri, because they're still going to be producing for their sports car program over in the World Endurance Championship. So it's not like goodbye Viri completely, it's just goodbye Viri from Formula 1, really, and that's still kind of sad, because I remember how hard that engine department fought to stay on the grid. I remember how Bruno Famine basically stood down from their team as well to try and protect that department. It was a very noble effort from the people involved, and it's just a shame that they're not only going out, but they're also going out kind of sad. I don't want to see Alpine at the back of the field, but there's just kind of no getting around it, Cam. I don't think they're necessarily massively slow. It's just in race trim, there just wasn't a lot there a lot of the time.
No. This is the yearly story with Renault and Renault adjacent, as they capped off an incredibly poor performance during this engine regulation set. Exactly how you'd think. Still 30 to 35 horsepower off of the other power unit manufacturers. Not terribly reliable compared to the others as well, and just when you're already under the gun like that, it kind of doesn't matter how good your chassis is, because we know what horsepower is worth. And then the chassis wasn't really that good either. We saw them have that huge resurgence really late last year, where like Pierre Gasly was on a searing run of form to finish out the season. When they got the weight out of the car, they got some aero on it. They started off with that very much a similar car, same tub as last year, was one of a couple of cars that were effectively B-spec 2024 cars. And then they didn't develop it. So they had a okay but not amazing base and the worst power unit on the grid. And then sacrificed everything, as they really should have done, for 2026. It just played out. It played out exactly as you would think it would, given that playbook. Which is a shame, because Pierre Gasly, God loves a trier, and so God really should love Pierre Gasly. But they make him drive an Alpine.
He drove the nuts off that thing. If anything, it's doubly sad, RJ, because the same weekend that Alpine had their best result of the year, and fantastic 6th place for Gasly at Silverstone, was the same weekend that Alpine had declared that they were shutting it down for the year and going all in for 2026. At the moment they threw in the towel was their best weekend of the year.
And what did they get out of that? But maybe 3 more points for the end of the season in a run that was capped off with a bottom 2 lockout, a 19-20 finish at Abu Dhabi. And I just think, even with Mercedes gearboxes and powertrains, if not for Pierre Gasly, what on earth makes me think that there is significant improvement along the way?
Yeah, and like beyond that, take the on-track stuff out of the equation, where this is a transitionary year for the team. The ingredients you put into the soup were never going to make something very good to begin with. And oh, by the way, Flavio Briatore has all the power.
Yeah, when I wrote about it on my website, I compared it to the state of American politics, or it's like you knew you were going to get the bad ending.
That has never preceded anything good. That comparison never means anything good.
No, and it's like you knew you were going to get the bad ending. It was just going to be a matter of when, and we got it in quite startling fashion when Oliver Oaks, who was a genuine breath of fresh air in that Alpine campus, young, tried to bring some new ideas to the table, second youngest team principal since Christian Horner took over at Red Bull back in 2006. And all of a sudden, after Miami, shock quits for personal reasons, flies off to Dubai, we never see him on the paddock again, goes back to running high-tech for a little bit, and Flavio Briatore makes himself interim director. Now, to clarify something here, yes, his brother was arrested in Southampton carrying a large amount of cash. These two things were not specifically linked, so we can't necessarily prove that Oliver was committing any kind of foul play. I have to be legally binding here when I say this.
He allegedly is in like 2 million print.
Yes, we cannot confirm any hard link between those two incidents. As far as we can tell, it's just coincidental. But Oliver Schott quit. Steve Nielsen's now the managing director, but we all know he's not really in charge here. We'd already seen that Flavio had told Esteban Ocon to kick rocks at the end of last year and knew that was his call. So it's more than obvious where this was going. And honestly, Flavio Briatore makes me miserable. He did nothing to really improve the state of Alpine. If anything, recently seeing him in pictures arm in arm with Nigel Farage in Abu Dhabi, leader of the Reform Party, which is grim fucking shit as it is. And then also, on a mildly, somehow more serious note, they secretly canned the Race Her program and took it behind the barn and shot it very quietly so that young girls can not get those karting opportunities they promised a couple of years ago. Flavio Briatore is...
This is the kind of leadership that can only happen with the only man that has ever won a world title as team principal at End Zone in charge.
At this point in 2025, it's the managing equivalent of a skid mark.
And worth noting regarding championships in Team Enstone, this is not their lowest points total, but it is their worst ever finish in the Constructors' Championship in any guise. This was, quantitatively speaking, technically worse than 2014, when that crooked
2014
car
was bad.
And that crooked car drove more crooked than it looked. The clip came back out, it happened like 11 years ago, of Pastor Maldonado's engine grenading the whole back of the car at the 2014 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, and the mechanics just point to the TV and start laughing at it.
Yeah, I've never seen that in a Formula One garage before, where the team is just so down bad, they're just glad it's over, that they're laughing at their car retiring.
It's a shame. Pierre Gasly, as
great
mentioned,
driver,
drove the nuts off that car. It had, I mean, he blew it up going so fast last year, and was practically close again this year. And really, he is the only driving element of this to note, because Jack Doohan, rough, struggle-licious even.
I don't think he was too bad, but when you had those two embarrassing crashes, the first one in his home round in Australia on the opening lap, when he wrecked it there of his own volition, and then he had the 180 mile an hour, forgot to close his DRS wing going into turn one, wreck at Suzuka. I think his arse was grass after that, which is just a shame, because I don't think he's talentless. He can clearly,
Cards were already stacked against him, because we know Colapinto had a 5-year contract as a reserve driver, which is...
Hold this for us.
We'll figure you out in a minute. Give us like a month.
That's like a Matt Flynn deal, for those of you who know your NFL from 15, 20 years ago. But Franco Colapinto was not going to be holding the clipboard for no Russell Wilson, because no Russell Wilson would come through the door. Man, what happened to Franco Colapinto after that Brazil accident? Because when he came on the scene with Williams, when they were at a pretty low point of their patience with Logan Sargent, that's why they chucked him out, Colapinto was getting results out of that car. He was making us question whether Alex Albon was that good or not. And then he strings together one accident after another. He ends 2024 on a poor note. He gets the ride in 2025, and he's just underwhelming. There's no DNFs, but there's nothing to write home about. And now he's just a non-entity, man.
It's weird.
Go, Andre.
No, I was going to say, I think you look at the advanced metrics, he's about 3 tenths behind Gasly, which honestly I don't think is too bad.
That's fine.
He didn't have an off-season, really, with this car. He was thrown in after 6 rounds. Yeah, there was a couple of early crashes like in Imola. I think he's gotten his head down, and I think he's been, on a good day, he can run right with Gasly. And that's more than fine. He just needs to do that a bit more consistently, because on a bad day, he's way off the pace. It's just, he's a work in progress. I'll have a lot more to say about Colapinto in an Alpine next year, more than likely, because this was fine for the most part. I don't think it was offensive or anything along those lines of Colapinto in the car. I just think he was put in a really bad situation.
Was offensive. Those moments where they were able to run each other quite close. I think the most notable thing about the final 2/3 of Alpine's season can be summed up as such: pulling team orders to protect 17th place, I think it was?
17th place at the United States
how many
Grand
points
Prix.
does 17th place pay out?
-0.
Oh, well, I really got to keep that result going there. I mean, that could be gained championship-defining result.
It could be what gets you 10th in the championship on countback. You never know.
Go to hell.
They were deeply threatened by the presence of Gabriel Bortoleto in 19th place, gunning them down in Austin. Embarrassing. Just, grim stuff all around, really.
A championship-capable team, and long ago, a very championship-capable and winning engine manufacturer. Just, this entire regulation set didn't even have the second best power unit at any point. Just poor.
The entire Alpine F1 team racing history section on Wikipedia covers at least one managerial change every single year.
That's at least one. There were a couple years where there was like 3 or 4.
Yeah. I think they're now at 16 bosses in the last 6 years, which is just ridiculous, to say the least. I want to move on. Let's talk about Kick Sauber. The last year of Sauber, as we know them, they've been ever present on the grid since 1991. You may have seen some
93.
of the quite... 93, actually, yeah. The quite fitting final pictures you may have seen on social media of Peter Sauber in the pit lane watching, as we know them, Sauber's final race. He was there for the very first one. He was there for the last one. Quite a poignant moment. And look, arguably the most improved team in Formula 1 this year. We got to remember, they had 4 points last season. 4. They only scored points at one weekend all season. 70 this year. And they were
how many points they get, how places they gained in the World Constructors Championship? Uno! They gained 1 point. With 70 points last year, they would have been 6th in the standings.
Yeah. Like, unbelievable. Yeah, and this is going to become a little bit of a theme with a couple of teams, but the way they started off the season, pretty darn similar to last year. Not great. And then they bring a B-Spec car, which makes even last year's McLaren B-Spec package look tame.
Yeah, like I remember, Hulkenberg was somehow 6th in Australia on opening day. I think it was 7th in Australia. Got some early points after Bortoleto smashed his car up. They did next to nothing for the next half a dozen races, and then they brought the B-Spec car in Barcelona. Hulkenberg goes 5th, and then he goes ballistic for the next 4 weekends, scoring points in all 4 of them, and then we'll get to the climax of that in just a minute. But overall, 70 points, somehow only good enough for 9th in the standings. Hulkenberg had 51 of those points. Interesting fact, Bortoleto actually beat Hulkenberg in qualifying events this year, 15-14 over the course of the year. I think average, though, was Hulkenberg was a quicker by, I think it was something like 0.06 over the course of it. It was very close between them. Hulkenberg won the race head-to-head, but the amount of points is lopsided, 51 to Hulkenberg. Amazingly, Gabriel Bortoleto had 19 points, but was also 19 in the standings, which is just, again, I looked at the last 5 years previously. 19 points would have put you in exactly 15th place in the standings for the last 5 years. This time it's 19 because Bortoleto was basically on the floor outside of the second Alpine. Crazy season. Again, more on that later, but you have to say, gentlemen, I think you can't. We can't talk about the improvement of Kick Sauber without mentioning their new team principal, Jonathan Wheatley, former Red Bull sporting director. He's come in, and what a year he's had. Turning a 4-point team into a 70-point team is pretty remarkable stuff.
Yeah, and not only that, but implementing Mattia Binotto, a man who has been crucified on this podcast many a time. But as long as you just lock him in the wind tunnel and the technical department, and he can't touch anything strategy related, he's actually not that bad.
Didn't I tell you that all Binotto had to do was just delegate, and this whole thing's fine?
Well, we'll get to his former home in due time.
I think we're bearing the lead
Cherokee
here.
drum.
We're bearing some very important.
There's a very good
leads
reason
here.
why Hulkenberg's points total was so lopsided.
Yeah,
Because we were there.
we were there.
For the Hulkenpodium.
I never thought it was going to happen. I thought as it happened that it was not going to happen. That Lewis Hamilton was just going to whiz on by him like he always does. No, it actually happened.
Away. He pulled away in changeable conditions in the rain. As all the McLaren papaya rules bullshit consumed the front of the grid, one thing mattered. The HULKENPODIum in Great Britain.
That was Nico Hulkenberg's 237th career race.
Hey, Adrian Sito, hold this for me.
Like, this is the 16th This is the 16th year Hulkenberg has been in Formula One in some capacity, whether it be on the sidelines, a test or reserve driver, because he debuted back in 2010. But I honestly thought that day would never come for Nico, and he drove the nuts off that Sauber that day. But yeah, he ignored his race engineer to come in for a change of tyres on 2 separate occasions. He passed Gasly, he passed Hamilton straight up on the road in the wet, and then when the track dried out and it was a slick race to the end, Hulkenberg was legitimately faster than Lewis Hamilton down the stretch, held him off, and we're all... This has to be the highlight of the entire season, surely. This is the one moment where we all came together as fans and was like, this is awesome.
It's got to be top epic. 3 at least.
Absolutely,
just like him.
It has to be. It was magical. And I don't think Hulkenberg's ever had the biggest fan base or reception in Formula One, but I think there's a lot of F1 fans who appreciate what a career he's had and what a great driver he's been throughout so many years, without his moment in the sun. And that was his moment, and and that became the story of the entire race. Sod the McLaren, sod the Lando Norris home finish. We were just here for the HULKENPODIum. So much so that the F1 subreddit exploded. A magical moment.
We had like 30 people in the Discord call, all losing our minds.
I can't remember moderating a Formula One race. That was more ridiculous than Abu Dhabi 2021. I'm not even joking. Like, us all losing our minds over the HULKENPODIum was something special.
Yeah, and again, like, Hulkenberg was for much of the season just the same old Nico Hulkenberg, reliable. And their first podium since 2012 with Kamui in Japan. Mm-hmm. Also an incredibly popular podium on the day.
Absolutely.
But yeah, that updated Sauber, I mean, they pretty much changed the whole car in a single major package. And it brought them from more of the same old ground effect era Sauber to being able to genuinely punch up at the midfield. And he got a podium in a Sauber.
The ninth best car on the grid
last year.
Yeah, a podium finish in the ninth best car.
Think of it like this, too. The wind tunnel allocation It's the same no matter how many points you score down in 9th place. The tank was still successful, even with a podium on the board.
That has got to be the craziest thing. And, Audi, as they'll be known, because this is not the first time that Sauber is rebranded, but this definitely feels more like a rebrand than when it was BMW Sauber, because the name was still on the plate, or when it was Alfa Romeo, because it was kind of just a branding exercise. This feels like a more substantiated change. It's not even going to be the C whatever when the car rolls off next year in 2026.
Yep,
That's how significant a change this is.
They're going to finally make something that isn't a variant of R18. It will be the R26, I believe, as we now know it. And yeah, no, it's not going to be Sauber with BMW stickers and money and engines. It is Audi, in its entirety.
They own 100%.
Yep, it is. If this is the end of it, despite going out in 9th, there are much sadder ways to go out than this.
Yeah. They were fighting all the way towards the end of the season, and I appreciate that given the low expectations we've had of this organization for the last little while. Hulkenberg, I hope he has the opportunity to seize his first real chance at a factory drive, unless you count that Renault. That isn't a Renault.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of question marks, but hey, I'm willing to see what happens. And get a word for Gabriel Bortoleto, who is hard done to be the best 19th place driver in a 21 driver championship. He got some good points. He got some good results. Did he have a few crashes? Yes, he did. One of them being, the same day Hulkenberg finishes on the podium, he goes off in the wet in Silverstone. That's not great. Crash at his home track, but that's not really his fault.
Gabby's got plenty of speed. He's got a lot of raw speed. I think if he can just pick the battles a little better, open up the toolbox a little bit more, and he is not the only driver we're going to be talking about in that regard. I think he'll be fine.
Yeah,
I think so too.
Yeah. If nothing else, I feel like he's not going to be a one-and-done driver, which is what I feared when he got this seat, because, Audi could have just gone for more established free agents than this.
They
As
could
a
have easily
factory
done.
team, if you make the stretch. But, yeah.
I think it's a damn solid team. I think Hulkenberg is just one of the best drivers in Formula One, period. For those who follow my top 10 lists, he's been pretty much in the same place for the last 3 years now. He's just a damn good veteran driver who will bring the car home, not make very many mistakes, and will maximise the opportunities that are presented to him. I think Bortoleto is raw, but I think he's quick, and that's half the battle. If you've got speed, you can refine that. He legitimately was on Hulkenberg's level over a single lap. That's a good sign, quite frankly. I like what this Audi team's base is going to be going in. Jonathan Wheatley did a superb job as team principal this year. Everybody that knows Wheatley knows he's damn good at his job. He was regarded as the best sporting director in Formula One. He's proven that first year with Kick Sauber, and he's turned them into... It's very unlucky they were only 9th in the standings this year. They deserved to be top 6 with the level of improvement that they had. At times, they did have a top 6 car easily in Formula One this year. So, I think if nothing else, Sauber did not go out sad. This is a team with a lot of promise, with Audi backing coming in officially. So we'll see what the Audi Revolut Formula One team brings to the table in 2026. But
Easy-go branding is out of my sport. Hallelujah! Yes. Hallelujah!
Rest
Get
in piss,
out of
bozo.
here! Get out of here, Steak! Get out of here, Kick! I don't even know what Revolut is, but I trust them more than that shit.
Isn't it a bank?
They're French bank. Yeah. MoneyGram, Haas F1
The gritty
team.
Haas.
The gritty Haas, who, again, 79 points on the year, somehow 8th. crazy midfield bar fight this year. 8th overall, and well, it's the last year we actually are calling the money grab because they've actually cut off that title sponsorship deal early. This will be the Toyota Gazoo Haas F1 team in 2026. It's not a Toyota
Gazoo Ferrari.
Yeah.
Just like BMW Sauber Ferrari. It's so back.
It's so weird. Head-to-head, funnily enough, Behrman 17-12 up in qualifying. They were dead level in races, 15 each head-to-head. Behrman actually won the teammate battle on points by 3, 41-38 on that one. But as a team overall on points scored, it's Haas's best season since 2016.
They gained 21 more points over last year and dropped a place in the standings. But Trey, I want to ask you something. It looks pretty even head-to-head, especially in races. There's not much in points. So why does it feel like Oliver Behrman really handled Esteban Ocon this year?
I think there's a couple of things to look at here, because if you remember how Haas's season started, and it was a rough start in Australia, there was immediate concern about Haas's high-speed instability, that the car was very fragile and very prone to snapping on the high-speed corners. Behrman, I just think, handled that situation a lot better than Ocon did. And it was weird because Ocon had that fantastic 5th place in China to start the season, and everyone was like, oh yeah, that's Ocon for you, he's gonna just roll out over the season. And the funny thing is that, and I just did a video writing about this, Behrman was quick, but the results weren't quite there. Apparently, according to my old colleagues at the race, around summer break time, Behrman had a bit of a rethink as to how he was approaching race weekends. And, well, back half of the year, Behrman opened up a can of whoop-ass. 35 out of his points came in the back half of the year after Zandvoort. And there's some key moments in there. He scored 5 Grand Prix finishes in the points in a row. A Haas driver has never done that before, where they've scored points in 5 straight weekends. And, of course, Mexico City, what a drive that was. Maybe the best individual drive a rookie has had in 2025.
Almost the first Haas podium.
I mean, qualified in Q3, picked off some very quick dudes around him, passed Max Verstappen straight up in the October pass of the month from Formula 1. Legitimately beat as ahead of Max on track. Obviously, the way the race shook out will play that differently, but in the end, he's holding off Oscar Piastri, arguably the fastest man in the sport this year, on raw speed, right at the end of the race, before that final safety car put a curtail in that fight. Haas's best ever result, 4th place as a team. There was a champagne bath, and like, the whole family was in tears. Anyone knows Ollie's dad, Mark. He's a very emotional man. God bless him. He looked like he was having heart palpitations on. He's a very fit-looking man, but it looked like he was about to have a heart attack when that 4th place went down.
He's looking like me running around my room when Ace Combat 8 got announced.
Exactly. And, yeah, my goodness, that was a magical weekend, and it's hard not to feel good about that, because Ollie Behrman has been hyped like this since he was a 17-year-old first-year F2 driver at Prima, when he had that first season, won 4 races, and I think everybody who was looking in Formula 1 and beyond was like, okay, I've seen enough. Basically, this kid's going to be something good. And he is. He is outrageously quick. You know, he's a bit reckless behind the wheel. He's got 10 penalty points.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
He was outrageously fast. He also was trying to do the race ban any percent speed run.
He's already picked up 12 penalty points in his 27 career starts. The only reason he's not facing a race ban is that 2 of them are in 2024 when he hit Franco Colapinto in Brazil. He's going into 2026 with 10 penalty points. He doesn't lose any of them until qualifying for the Canadian Grand Prix 7 rounds in. There's a reasonable chance he might get a race ban going in, and again, you can't do that. That is a big no-no. Picking up where Kevin Magnussen left off.
Yes, Kevin Magnussen, world's least ethical F1 driver on track. And yeah, it's weird because it felt kind of like an old school Haas season where they were just wildly up and down.
Very much so.
But also their floor was high enough that it wasn't awful when it was bad.
Yeah.
Worst, they were still... Other than Australia, where that car looked like it was trying to kill both of its drivers. They actually put their heads together and cured that relatively quickly. Which is more than I can say for certain other teams and their development tracks this year.
Yeah, Ayakamatsu is really good. He's single-handedly fronting the agenda that you need an engineer guy at the front of the helm because he's done exceptional work the 2 years he's been team principal here. Very, very impressed with him.
Yeah. Well, and also the partnership with Toyota in that they're not Toyota F1, but they contract out to Toyota Gazoo for development and manufacturing. And rather than having to go through Dallara and have that done, Toyota can focus a little more one-on-one with them because unlike the old days where they were bringing, 4 aero packages in a year during the LMP1H era, well, you get one every couple years, so you can actually afford to move some resources around. Haas has used that really well. To the point where it is more of a full-blown technical partnership going into the new regulations. And they're increasingly looking like one of the better run teams in the midfield.
Which is good. And I think, to a point about Behrman, I think at some point we gotta let these younger drivers be some level of clumsy. I don't think Behrman was just outright a danger to himself and everybody else on the track anytime they step behind the car. He's just a little clumsy in ways that got him a lot of penalty points. I am almost certain that is going to be ironed out of his game in time.
My only counter to that would be he did crash under a red flag.
Yeah, that's tough. But again...
That's like the ultimate no-no.
You gotta learn somehow, man.
Yeah, 6 of his points came from start. I mean, I think the 2 he got for the red flag in Monaco was very unlucky, the way it played out. It was. I wouldn't put that down as a huge driver error. I think it was just unfortunate where Behrman was on track when the red came out. Especially given it happened to Charles Leclerc at Monza, and you could see when it happened that Leclerc made every effort to slow down the moment the red came out. So, I think the stewards eased up on that as the season went on, but I think Behrman was just very unlucky that happened in Monaco. The Silverstone red flag was unforgivable. He's very lucky he wasn't parked for the weekend for that. That was, and I'm glad it was a 4-point swing because that was hugely egregious. He did a 170 mile an hour, attempted race pit entry under a red flag. You cannot do that. That is, completely out of order. At best. Yeah, and, there's a lot of little niggles here and there because Behrman's had a lot of little minor incidents on track when it comes to his racecraft. I don't think this is a huge issue, but it is something he needs to be very careful about because, like I said, a race ban is about as egregious as it gets in Formula 1 these days, and he'll have no excuse.
I just don't think it should be like a permanent black mark against his record. If he ends up getting a race ban, it sucks. But he's gonna hopefully have another decade of solid results, maybe in a nice red car. Although I don't know if it's that nice.
Red car.
Maybe it's not going to be so nice.
More on them later. Team Silverstone, Aston Martin Formula 1 team.
Oh brother.
Aston Martin, Aramco Formula 1 team, 7th on the board, 89 points. 5 points less than last year, funnily enough, but 7th place. Head-to-head records are bleak. Alonso 29-1 in qualifying, the most lopsided swing in terms of head-to-head numbers of any pairing on the grid. Actually, a lot more balanced in races. 17-12 Alonso, if you include the sprints as well.
Sunday man Lance Stroll.
Sunday man.
Get the fuck out of here.
It's hard to argue with that. Lance Stroll 16th in points with 33. Alonso cracked the top 10 on the final round in Abu Dhabi because of the 6th place finish he had there to overtake Hadjar and Hulkenberg to steal a top 10 place on the way out.
Isaac Hadjar got robbed by this year in Qatar. More on him later.
He really did. He'll be next, but man, it's weird describing Aston Martin because on track they were kind of milquetoast. It's like
they were the same as they were last year. They were exactly the same. Everything they bolted to this car just made it worse.
Yeah, it's like, in a sense, I think they actually got slightly better as the year went on because I think Alonso started getting into the points more frequently because Alonso didn't score points until his home round in Barcelona. But
yeah, Trey, you know why?
Why is that?
They took upgrades off the car. It's the same shit every year with this team.
It's the same story. It's like they're still trying to figure out how to make their what was initially quick car faster. They can't do it.
An end to world hunger. A cure for all of humanity's worst diseases. All things that would be possible if Aston Martin Formula One team could just master an upgrade package that it introduces.
Yes, they came out with a car that was grease lightning at the start of 2023. And relatively speaking, it has never gotten better relative to, they've had, the worst development curve in F1.
They're 2 years without a podium.
To be fair, the fact that they were getting podiums in 2023 was like a major what the fuck moment for our other big factory protagonists.
We couldn't believe it at the time. Alonso leading UNC division to glory with 6 podium finishes in the first 8 weekends.
GP1 engine.
Yeah, they found something. It's weird. This is not a bad year for Aston Martin, but it's just a very stagnant one. It's one that's they're here. If we still gave out an M101 award for the most forgettable throwaway element of the grid, it was probably Aston Martin this year.
Damn. Sauber didn't win this hypothetical award this time. That's a shame.
No, it's amazing what Nicky Green does for a motherfucker.
Piggybacking off of that point, Fernando Alonso was still old and driving the nuts off the car that he's probably developed down a dark path. Lance Stroll is still wildly inconsistent, and it's almost year 10 of him, and he still has not made any forward progress since the 2020 COVID season.
Yeah.
We've been here before.
It's time is a flat circle. That said, it's weird. Alonso was making more in-race mistakes than we've probably ever seen out of him.
Mm-hmm.
Just genuine old man moments. At the same time, he was brilliant in a good 6 or 7 races this year.
He actually qualified really well as well. He made Q3 13 times this year, which is something you don't normally associate with Fernando's raw speed. But he was actually regularly getting the Aston into Q3. At times, he is still as potent as he was in 2005, 20 years ago. It's just happening a bit less frequently now. And that's okay for a guy who's about to be F1's first 45-year-old since Graham Hill.
He went scoreless until Barcelona. He then was pretty damn consistently in the points.
Yeah, he was probably the number 11 on my top 10 list, only because I felt better about the Williams drivers being there, because it's so hard to evaluate where Aston Martin is at as a team, and when you have Lance Stroll as a teammate. And can I have a brief 2-minute tangent here real quick? Can we please...
roll the camera.
Can we please stop associating Lance Stroll with not being bothered? I just find this... Look, there are very good reasons to dunk on Lance Stroll, right? When we can rattle them off if we really wanted to.
The vacations to Tel Aviv are probably the main one. That was the craziest thing. It's all the teenage and early 20s girlies that were loving Lance Stroll up until now, they flipped very quick.
And look, do not get me wrong. Lance Stroll is never going to get a benefit of the doubt from anybody on the internet. I think that bed has been made because of his Nepo baby status and what that represents in modern day society. This is we need to come up with better... You can just say he's a bit crap, okay? I don't need people saying, oh, he looks disinterested, he doesn't look bothered, he looks like he doesn't want to be there. This is a man who smashed up his... Like, this is the man who tried to smash up a garage when he was eliminated in Q1 last year, and the same guy who tried to race on 2 broken wrists. If this man, who, by the way, is the son of a billionaire, doesn't want to be in Formula 1, trust me, he'd have bolted a long time ago. Like...
Yeah,
sometimes the simplest answer is the correct one. Maybe he's just not that good.
Which
That's
is
okay.
It's absolutely maddening though, because like he'll have like those spurts in a season. I see like two of them at least.
RJ, he opened the season with a mixed condition 6th place in a shitbox, and that was as good as his year got.
He had 3 7th place finishes in 4 races, and then it's just all blue squares across that Wikipedia page.
He is wildly inconsistent. He is just not that great. The ceiling is still good with Lance. On a good day, he can still bust out a really solid race weekend every once in a while. But it's obvious at this point that is the limitations of Stroll as a driver. And we've not even mentioned the backstage shenanigans about Aston Martin yet, because they've had 2 big technical reshuffles this year. And of course,
Dan Fallows.
Dan
Get
Fallows
the fuck out of here.
Shoved into a locker. 7 designers were let go earlier on this year. And then the big one we found out last month, Adrian Newey is now going to be team principal going forward, not just chief managing director or technical officer, as whatever they wanted to call him initially. Because allegedly, he and CEO Andy Carroll, who's also been moved away from the CEO post and into what is a new role of Chief Strategic Officer, which is something you can't even find on LinkedIn these days. He'll be talking directly with Honda, while Adrian Newey is now managing this team for the first time in his nearly 40-year history of being in Formula 1. A weird situation, to say the least, for a team that's got a lot of hype and a lot of pressure on it going into this year.
RA621H and its many variants were a series of brilliantly designed, best-in-class, championship-winning power units. Its successor gets to shove geriatric Fernando Alonso and mediocre Lance Stroll around next year. I hate it in this house!
When you've gone through 3 team principals in the last calendar year, because they got rid of Mike Crack to put in Andy Cowell, and now they've reassigned Andy Cowell to put in Adrian Newey as team principal, because... why was he just going to sit around and not manage things when he joined Aston Martin and left Red Bull?
It's just a weird situation because, again, like, you would expect Newey's time to be best spent designing, like leading the technical department.
Right. It's one of those ones where I've been in 2 minds about this from the start. On the one hand, Adrian Newey's got so much experience in Formula 1 and so much seniority in what he's been allowed to do in F1 teams that making him team principal I don't think is a huge difference from his day-to-day anyway, and there will be people there that can take some of those team principal duties off of him. I think we're going to see a lot more Andy Stevenson next year, for example, who's their sporting director, plays a key role in that team. I think he'll handle a lot of the media stuff, for example. But at the same time, and I can understand this point. I had a chat with Jonathan Noble about this the other day. It's the same situation where it's like, you want him to be your car whisperer. You want him to be in the lab, in the technical departments, trying to maximize this regulation set. That's what Adrian Newey does better than almost anyone in existence. And you get the impression that him not being in that scenario is arguably blunting your own sword. I don't know what this is going to be, and I think that's what makes it fascinating.
They're going to be under immense pressure to perform.
Ferrari did this exact move going into 2019 when they got rid of Maurizio Arrivabene in making Binotto, the leader of the whole smash. It did not work. It did not work. I don't think for a second I'm comparing the talents of Binotto to Newey. That is not a comparison.
No, it's a comparison in structure and leadership, and it's proof that Binotto is a fantastic engine guy, but he's not necessarily the sort of person you want leading a team. At the same time, we've seen the trend recently of more technical people running teams can go well. We've seen it with Lauren Mekis, we've seen it with Ayo Komatsu. It can work both ways, so we'll have to wait and see how this goes. The jury is still out for me on this one, and I think that's what makes Aston Martin fascinating, given that I don't think any team on the grid has got more hype going into what these new regulations are going to be than Aston Martin, because of Adrian Newey and what he could bring to the table.
Because of Honda power units, and because Fernando Alonso finally gets to drive an Adrian Newey car. He got to McLaren the first time just as Newey dipped for Red Bull. When Alonso left McLaren on bad terms the first time, he had the chance to join Red Bull, and he decided to go back home to Renault. Well, now it happens, and then, oh, by the way, there's that awkward Alonso-Honda reunion that's going to happen, which I'm sure they'll patch things up over time, but man, despite my reservations about the Ford powertrains, I'm going to be real. If Red Bull outpoints Aston Martin over the course of the season, that's not going to shock me at all.
Not on the current strength of Red Bull's technical department, which is weird to say given how the season started. I would also say that Honda have been shockingly kind of walking around with a bounce in their step regarding the new power units. Given a lot of statements about it, and it's not like the Ron Dennis, the engine's like a piece of jewelry, throwaway quote while it was blowing up in a McLaren test car out in Abu Dhabi.
The only thing that's going to satisfy people is if Fernando Alonso becomes the oldest Formula One winner in the modern age, because that's the standard that they've set for this hype. I mean, and it sounds good. It sounds good when they fired it up.
Good luck with that. I do think Aston Martin are at least, 2 to 3 years away from... if everything goes right, I think they're 2 to 3 years away from fighting at the front for championships. And that's a big old if.
And that's going to have to come with a whole new lead driver, because I know Alonso's not sticking around for that. And, well, what's Lance Stroll going to be? Running the team?
I was going to say, Alonso is set to be a dad next year, God willing, and he's already said on the record that if the Aston Martin is competitive next year, he will step away, because he considers that his work done if the car is quick. So, again, a lot of pressure.
I don't know if I believe him.
I'm free
I don't
now.
know either. But, Williams.
No, we're skipping
reasonable.
one. We're skipping one.
Sorry, my bad. I scrolled too far down my... I forgot that Visa Cash App Racing Bulls was sixth. We'll get to them first. My apologies. VCARB. Visa Cash App Racing Bulls.
Bulls.
Sixth place in the standings, 92 points. A kind of chaotic year, but also kind of a calm one in a sense. It's a very interesting sort of team. Hadjar was 21-6 up in qualifying against Lawson once the team was settled. 19-8 to the good in races. Well, Lawson was 14th in points on 38. Hadjar was Rookie of the Year on points. 12th overall with 51, same as Hulkenberg, just lost out on countback. But yes, this is not anywhere near the full story. There were two significant swaps over the course of this season where after just two races after the Chinese Grand Prix in March, Yuki Tsunoda was promoted up to the Red Bull senior team, and in exchange, Liam Lawson, who started the year as a Red Bull driver, was sent back to Racing Bulls to continue his development and career down there. And of course, the other big one after the British Grand Prix halfway through the season, Christian Horner was let go as CEO of Red Bull. More on that later. Lauren Mekis, who was the team principal of Racing Bulls at the time, was promoted into the Red Bull role, while Alan Permain, long-running sporting director, most known for his Enstone days, he did 27 years over there, became team principal of Racing Bulls. And despite all the chaos, despite all the drama, I think that's a pretty good year for Racing Bulls, all told.
Because all the drama hit, it feels like it hit really early, and then this was just the team from, relatively early season forward. Car was pretty good.
Good
all
all
things
rounder.
considered. They had a couple of really not great cars. Last year was a little better. This year was further improvement on that.
They doubled their points total.
I'm just going to come out and say, Isak Hadjar was balling out.
Isaac Hadjar was so good. Again, I talked about this, like, I thought he was going to be the first man on the chopping block going into 2025. Now he's on the chopping block for an entirely different reason, but it's not for the one that I thought it was going to be, which is, it's good. He got a podium. He got a podium this season on pace alone at the Dutch Grand Prix. That's awesome, man. Good for him.
Yeah, and, started off the season with that really messy, what ended up being a DNS in Australia. Getting roasted by his program director and Helmut Marko. In piss he rest, as of this week, as we know. And he bounced back from that better than I think any of us could have imagined. He just put his head down and went to work.
I remember one weekend after that in China, he qualified 6th on the grid. Like, I was like, okay, this kid is for real. And look, as RJ alluded to, it felt like he got the F1 gig out of necessity more than merit. And don't get me wrong, he was very solid in Formula 2 the year going into F1. He won 4 feature races that season. That is normally a pretty good indication that you're pretty damn good. Ultimately lost out on the title basically via just sheer rotten luck. The final round of the year, his car stalled and got mecha-chromed from a front row start in Abu Dhabi. But he got the V-carb seat. We had the embarrassment of Albert Park and being comforted by Anthony Hamilton, which was a moment that was a genuine, real viral moment for Formula One across the board. But got his head down, got on with it, and just drove fantastic over the course of the season. There was not only, Zandvoort's the headline in one, and the thing about Zandvoort was it was a very clean weekend. He was matching Verstappen on pace at one point, and, he legitimately qualified 4th that weekend, stayed with that second group, and then when Lando Norris's car died, he just inherited 3rd place, and it looked comfortable. It was never under any real threat for that 3rd place.
He spent most of that race, Dre. He had to hold off George Russell, who, as we'll get to, was a driver of the year contender. It was fantastic.
Absolutely, and Hadjar was just
ask for
superb.
More than that.
Yeah, look, Liam Lawson was under pressure this year to perform. Hadjar's come in and immediately outshined Liam Lawson, who is a good driver.
That's the thing.
And should have even done it right by more margin, because he was running 6th. With 2 laps to go in Qatar, had a mechanical failure, had one of
wheel
the
cover fell off, punctured the tire.
Yeah, the kind of that curved, element that goes over the top of the tires on these cars fell off, punched a hole in his left front tire, and suddenly, again, one of the drives of the weekend in that race, turned into nada.
Since the Verstappen, Gasly, Sainz generation, Red Bull Juniors all made it up to Formula One, I think the most hyped Red Bull prospect in terms of you've heard about this guy, you know what he can be, since then had been Liam Lawson up until this season. I'm just gonna disregard that whole 2-race stint Red Bull and forget it like it ever happened, because after this year, I don't think he's sniffing a Red Bull seat again, man.
No.
Yeah, Liam, when he was good, he could pretty much go bar for bar with Hadjar, but it wasn't all that consistent. When he was at a Red Bull, he was averaging, 2 or 3 crashes a weekend.
Yeah,
which was unplayable, which is why they made the decision to swap the drivers. And look, the results ultimately didn't pan out for either of them. We'll talk about it in the Red Bull section, but maybe that should have been the play all along, is that maybe you just give both drivers time in the cars that they spent most of the year anyway and let them test those in the off-season, but...
Unfortunately, that is... hopefully that's how Red Bull works a little bit more now that Helmut Marko is gone from the program due to a variety of extremely stupid reasons.
So then what does Arvid Lindblad have to do to really impress? And what does Liam Lawson have to do to measure up against that to make sure he doesn't get cut next?
I don't know with Liam. I think Liam's bite in racecraft,
Ropey.
it is. He drives way too aggressively for someone not that good, is what I will say.
The thing is that I think Lawson is a very skilled driver. I think Lawson is quick enough to be in Formula One on merit without the Red Bull pressure that's around him. And I fear they might be some pressure on him because he's going into what is his, year 2.5 after his 11 races he had before this year anyway. Arvid Lindblad just got to keep it clean, because this is the last remnants of the Marco era of the Red Bull Driver Academy. There's heavy rumours that Rocky is now taking over the academy side of things. You remember him, Sebastian Vettel's old race engineer? He's now going to be in charge of the academy. I hope with Marco gone and Rocky in charge, it might be a new era of, you know what? You don't necessarily need to pump academy talent at this to make it work. I think if you refine Lawson a little bit and you give him the confidence to say, look, your job's going nowhere, just drive the car and we'll work on the rest, I think there could be a very solid driver in there, because he's got speed. He's got the racecraft is ropey. He's again, I think this counts as he's a bit too over aggressive. But I think there is
he has an enormous chip on his shoulder.
Yeah, and I think just telling him you're not going to lose your job if you're not disastrous. Just drive the car. I think that will just do him the world of good. I honestly do. He's been under high pressure from day one.
Yeah, if you look at the state of the Red Bull Junior team right now, who's left in the system? Like Oliver Goethe, I don't have high hopes for him. I don't want to look like I'm looking at Nicholas Solov's passport and thinking, like, this guy's not going to make it, but that guy does not have the aura of a future F1 driver. And the guy that probably would have been next in line, they just had to cut him, and that's the reason why Red Bull fired Helmut Marko.
Because Alex Dunn is not in the program, because Marco went over everyone in the company's heads to sign him, and then Red Bull had to pay the severance package and handed him his papers.
Yeah. A stupid decision that cost Red Bull hundreds of thousands of pounds and ultimately Marco his job. Threw a young man's career into fucking limbo, because what's Alex Dunn's next alternative? The Alpine Academy?
It's compromised it's genuinely compromised his career for at least the short term.
But at least he got a second year of F2 out of it, because that's something he wasn't initially meant to get, but now he's got the funding for a second year of F2, which at least keeps him in the window. Right. It's something.
I am just concerned that next year I fear Isaac Hadjar is going to be yet another notch on Max Verstappen's bedpost.
I fear it too, but with the fact it's a brand new car and a brand new regulation set, I think he's got the best chance that anyone has had going in. I say that sincerely. I think he could do it.
I hope so. I really hope so. Good luck to him.
I mean, he's a damn good driver. Fantastic rookie season.
Despite the nonsense, it was a great year in Faenza. Now let's go to the top half with Williams, who were a step above everybody else we just talked about, way behind everybody else in front of them, and you know what? For fifth place with 137 points, that ain't bad.
This went extremely well. Head-to-head, it's weird with the head-to-head, because it's like you have to look at the Williams seasons in compartments. Overall, it was... Really? Yeah, Sainz 17-12 in qualifying, not that you would have thought that at the start of the year. And Albon 16-13 in races, not that you would have thought that at watching the end of the year. Albon was 8th in points with 73, 11 top 10s, best finish of 5th. Carlos Sainz Jr. What's that, Dre?
It's worth pointing out, that 5th place from Albon happened 4 times that season. He had 4 5th place finishes, let alone 1. When Albon was on it, he was on it.
Damn, who does he think he is? Fernando Alonso with all those P5s?
Well, not just that. Carlos Sainz Jr., the new man, the new hire going into the year, 9th in points with 64, 2 podiums, a sprint podium, 10 top 10s, and those 2 podiums were a pair of 3rd places. All this done in basically a cut-and-shut bodge job of a B-spec of last year's car.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Williams used to do this like 5 years ago. We thought this team was going to die soon.
Yeah, I was able to hang out at Cadillac's Christmas do, and multiple people described that Williams to me as, quote, a carryover.
It was the track day car built up in your garage with your dad.
Yes, and yet despite that, they came out of the traps, at least on Albon's side of the garage, on fire. Like, Albon was in the point 7 out of the first 8 rounds. I often use Imola as like the big race where there's like the Williams that arrived party, because Albon was hassling Charles Leclerc's Ferrari all race long in that Williams, and it was some questionable racecraft from Leclerc putting Albon on the grass, call it what it is, that basically denied Albon a shot at Oscar Piastri and a potential podium that day. It was the real coming out party for Williams, and yeah, that ended up being their ceiling for most of the year, because, like I said, Albon had a rough middle. There was a cut level, like he was taken out by Lawson in Catalan. He had a back-to-back engine failures in Canada and Austria. And then after Monza, he went completely off the boil. Didn't score a point in the Grand Prix again all season. Only the 6th place in one of the sprints that was his only points for the rest of the year. But then Carlos Sainz picked up the slack and then went ballistic. Like Baku, he had an opportunistic qualifying session, because there was 6 red flags in Baku qualifying, and of course rain affected as well in the middle of it too. And he qualifies in 2nd, finishes a comfortable 3rd, has another podium in Qatar in strategy hell in that Grand Prix as well. For Carlos Sainz, 48 out of his 64 points came in the final 8 rounds. That is 150 point pace over the course of the year. Like, that is crazy from Carlos Sainz.
He left some on the table. He completely botched Coda fighting for 7th place. He had every unlucky situation imaginable come down upon him in Mexico City.
Yeah.
There's probably another 10, 15 points in that if he just has those 2 races go better for him.
I stand by what I've said before. It's the glory of Grove and the downsides of Grove in one season, where you can see the promise of this team and you can see the vision of what James Vowles is doing with this team on their good days, but they still have operational issues that plague them, because I think this is a 200-point team at full potential. They left a lot on the table this year, but they were still comfortably the kings of the midfield. Easy.
Yeah, the thing that was like a shock to me as well is, like, it's not like Albon's pace fell off. He just started crashing down the stretch on this year. Like Las Vegas, where he just drove into the back of Lewis, trying to overtake him in a DRS zone. Same race where he had issues in qualifying. Like, it was just really messy down the stretch for him, which is a shock, because earlier in the year, like, he was bulletproof.
It's one of those ones where you have those question marks about Albon every once in a while, where I'm like, where he will have those bad patches where you go, hang on, is he actually alright here? Now, don't get me wrong, I think the vast majority of his time at Williams has been outstanding, so I think he's earned a benefit of the doubt, but maybe we're starting to see the possibility that the extra quality that Carlos Sainz brings you as a driver is starting to come through, where he's now adapting well to this Williams, and when he's on it, as we saw with Sainz in the back half, he's good enough to podium in this thing, which is crazy for Williams.
On raw pace, like that podium in Qatar, like, he just drove away from Kimi Antonelli in a Mercedes, to the point where when that whole deal went down with Lando was too far behind. He couldn't do anything about it.
Yeah.
I wonder, we're heading into another technical reset. Now, I know that, like, using previous anecdotal evidence is, like, not going to inform how things go out in 2026, and the development race is going to change a lot in 2026, but I am going to say this wouldn't be the first big opportunity for Williams to really hit it at the park year one of a brand new technical cycle.
Well, if we know what we think we know, they're going to have the right engine to do it, the right gearbox to do it, because even when they had the Mercedes engine in 14, they actually were still doing their own gearboxes, and they were still made of metal when most of the teams had moved to carbon. I think what Vowles is building here, and the team he has in place now, and having sponsorship to bring in real money into Williams, because that car has some sponsors on it. They have some actual money to throw at facilities. They're no longer drawing up their layouts for cars on paper, which was still a thing, 4 years ago? And not in the Newey way where he was doing the aero concept of it, the actual car on graphing paper. I think Williams is very well set up to take further steps, because I think the team in place they have, the engine that they're going to have next year, and now you have two drivers who, now that Sainz is adapted to the team, can punish everyone else in the midfield on a good day.
It's a real opportunity for Sainz or Albon to get a first win with this setup.
I'm going to pump the brakes on win. What I would say is that at least they're not having to pay the Logan Sargent repair bills every week.
Dare to dream. Dare to dream is all I'll say. But when you consider the depths of this, where this team was right around pandemic time, you'll take that any day of the week.
This team was dead in the water 5 years ago.
They were dead in the water. This is their best year on points by one since 2016 when they had 138, 1 point more than they had for this year. So they've basically replicated their 2016, which was basically year 3 of them in the hybrids when they really started to just lag behind the other manufacturers. I think this will be the big surprise on the grid, rightly or wrongly. I know Cam and RJ are a bit more positive than I am about this. I'm concerned that having to start over after 2 years of a carry job, it makes me a bit nervous as to what this next car might be. And they may have to take some shots in the dark. I'm not sure if Grove is ready for a new regulation set to come out on the traps flying like that. I think there's a chance that Cam and RJ are right here and that this could be a big surprise, maybe back into the top 4. I think there's just as much of a chance they sink to 8th or 9th again. I think this is going to be a very volatile, potentially high-risk team.
You know what? I love volatile and high-risk, baby. Sign me up. Hey, and as it turns out, the new ownership, they actually like the Williams name so much, they're going to bring back the 90s branding of it.
You know, my thing with that, Dre, though, is that going into this year, do we have any expectations on Williams?
I didn't, in all fairness. This was an outstanding year for Williams, and props to James Vowles.
Could even think of that going into a new regulation set.
I'm just nervous because we've seen Grove before at their best and at their worst. Like it would be unfair to. I think as someone who's seen Williams the last 10 years, I can't be confident in them one way or the other. I think the reality is probably somewhere in the middle. I just think there's a coin flip chance they blow this. Only because James Vowles has been so good as team principal since taking over the last 3 years that I think this could easily go north or south. I'm not sure. That's all it is.
I'd be fine with them just holding station.
Yeah. If they hold 5th, that's really good. Like, let's not forget. Like, I don't think they really crushed the last technical reset either.
No.
Well, in 2019, their car was illegal.
And you got to remember,
the best thing about it.
James Vowles had a 5-year plan that they would be challenging for wins. This is year 4. So if they, by their own state of ambition, they need to be thinking about regularly challenging for podiums next year if they want to satisfy that demand. We shall see.
Give me the bravado, baby, because I know we probably feel a bit more confident about them than the team in fourth place in the standings. And you know what? I'm just going to let them talk about for Ferrari for a bit.
Scuderia Ferrari HP, fourth on the board. There's a bit of a jump here to the real Formula One, I guess you could say. 398 points scored. Head-to-head, Charles Leclerc was 23-7 up in qualifying and races. I also love that RJ has deliberately muted his microphone on Riverside for this, which I think kind of says it all, really. Charles Leclerc was fifth in the points, 242, 7 podiums, 20 times in the points, 2 second places on the year. I want to say Mexico and I think Monaco was the other one. And Lewis Hamilton 6th in the points, 156. He got that one sprint win and not much else. He was fourth 4 times over the course of the year. That was his best result. Hamilton went, for the first time in his 18-year career, an entire season without a podium finish, if you don't want to count sprints as Grand Prix podiums, I suppose. Look, on paper, I wouldn't say in a vacuum this was terrible. However, you've got to understand, they were 14 points off the Constructors' Championship this season. Or last season. They were a distant fourth, and McLaren, the team they were contending, has beaten them more than 2-1 since then. Where do you want to start on this one?
Get out.
Well, there is a lot of shit here.
I'll start you off. This was Ferrari gambling. In a sense of even more, because McLaren did this too, to a degree, but not to the same extreme that Ferrari did, where they gave it the big one going into the season that 90% of this car was brand new parts. They gambled last year of the regulation set to go all in with Lewis Hamilton in tow. And again, you don't sign Lewis Hamilton for anything other than championship contention. They thought that was a straight upgrade on Carlos Sainz, and that this was going to be Ferrari's all-in shove for their first world title in 17 years. It bombed spectacularly.
Yes. Let's see. The car... how about the car? The car was congenitally flawed. Everything about it was piss poor. It wasn't that good in a straight line.
Nope.
It wasn't that good in the slow speed corners, the medium speed corners, or the high speed corners.
Nope.
Without badly compromising one of the other factors there. The through corner balance was trash. That's about it, really. Like it just, the only time this Ferrari looked like anything other than a complete dud was when they were running with what we found out later, spectacularly, to be an illegally low ride height in China. Because when Hamilton won, they realized that car, in the sprint in China, it was never going to be able to run that low for a Grand Prix, so they raised it. And it was terrible. And then they got bounced for ride height anyway.
Yeah, Hamilton's car. It was the first time in Formula One history that a team had both its cars disqualified in a Grand Prix, but for 2 different reasons.
Yes, because Charles Leclerc's car was underweight.
Yeah, Charles Leclerc's skid block was fine. The problem was it was 799.2 kilos, and the limit was 800.
That's a lot of piss to hold in that bladder.
They said that even with a replaced front wing, it was still underweight.
Yes, Ferrari, alongside the 2 protagonists at the end of 2024, both went for very heavy redesigns on their car to hit the ground running in 2025. One of them won this Constructors' Championship with months to spare. The other one fell flat on their face. This Ferrari was I'm going to say this is probably a worse chassis than 2020. And you could have given that car 2 million horsepower, it still wasn't beating the W11. But we know the Ferrari power unit it's fine. It's fine. Good. It's a good power unit when it's not blowing itself the fuck up.
Cam, it's good enough to contend for a title. It's not going to be the reason you lose anything.
It was in 2022, but I digress. This car was cheeks. It's a Ferrari. It's a shitbox. Probably the worst car since 09.
Their worst chassis since at least 14. Like, that's how I look at it.
14 power unit was a piece of junk, too. And look, that final race, what did the two of us say to each other in the Discord server? It looks like the F14T out there at Qatar.
Qatar was the one that was particularly bad. Like, we watched the first lap of Charles Leclerc in that sprint, and it looked like he was fighting for his life out there. He had a broken rear wing. I was like, if I swear to God, I watched that first lap of Leclerc sprint in Qatar, and I thought the car had already been through an accident and hadn't been repaired properly. Like, it was horrific to watch. Like, it was like 2014 where the F14T was experiencing oversteer and understeer at the same time, in the same corner on some occasions. It was horrific.
Yeah, and like, there were races when Ferrari weren't that bad. Like, this car was podium capable, but only in the hands of Charles Leclerc, just grabbing it by the throat and making it get the podium.
So, I want to say it was outside of Monaco, which is a bit of an outlier, given the nature of Monaco. Saudi Arabia was the closest they got to a Grand Prix, and I think Charles was 8 seconds off the win, and that's as near as Charles got, and he had to wring the neck of that car to get anywhere near that kind of range. Yeah, Hamilton was 30 Piastri, seconds down the road.
Yeah, it was Piastri and Verstappen chasing each other away at the front, and Leclerc doing his damnedest to try and keep up. Yeah, it's just this car, it was just starved of aerodynamic performance, and that was them basically flipping a coin on whether the car was going to get disqualified for a ride height infringement because they were running it that low. It just wasn't very good. And the thing is, if they had hit the ground running and killed development, well, you hit the ground running. You get stuff on the board early. What actually happens, they were horrible in... They were piss poor in every condition in Australia. Lewis barely scored a point that day.
Was passed around the outside by Oscar Piastri on the final lap of that race.
Oscar Piastri broke that man's ankles.
Yeah, Oscar Piastri had no business being down that far anyway, but that's something we'll talk about in the McLaren section.
That race, round one of the year, tells you all you need to know about how good McLaren performed in the off-season with their car revision and how poorly Ferrari did.
How did Charles Leclerc get pole in Hungary?
Well, that's the neat part. Because the car was right on the limit on ride height, and he led most of that race, and then allegedly, they had to bump up the tire pressures on his final stop to keep the car from getting DSQ'd, and he sunk like a rock.
And I need to stress, because it's not fair to do this man an injustice despite the team around him. Charles Leclerc was incredible this season, despite this car. He is God loves so a crier. Good. Like, he is the number 2 man in Formula 1 pound for pound and probably has been for half a decade by now. Charles Leclerc is a phenomenal racing driver. I cannot stress this enough about how good this man is, because he got 242 points in the clear number 4 car this year. Like,
you know, the wilder thing is that for a portion of this year, they were like definitive number 2. And
absolutely.
Then, well, what ends up happening is that they killed development on this car because it didn't turn out that good.
No,
but it's almost like their understanding of how to get time out of it actually got worse across the year, because McLaren didn't really develop past a certain point. A bunch of teams didn't, and they just got worse and worse.
Yeah, I think McLaren killed off their car development around Singapore kind of time, where right around the time they won the Constructors anyway. I mean,
but Ferrari just... Charles Leclerc is a phenomenal racing car driver, and unfortunately, to turn our attention to the elephant in the room. If you saw how last year went at Mercedes and thought that this year was going to go any differently for Lewis Hamilton, I have oceanfront property in Kansas to sell you.
Okay, hold on. Now, we all know that by the end of that season, we was check out his old job. But sometimes in our day-to-day lives, if you are tired of one job, you cannot wait to start your new one. And by that, I mean, you just want to do everything to get the hell out of your old job, right?
Sure.
Can I take this one? I mean, this for me, this... The thing is, right, Lewis Hamilton finished 86 points behind Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah, it wasn't good. It wasn't a good year.
About Charles Leclerc. Yeah, this was Lewis Hamilton's worst year in F1. I have no problem saying this comfortably on the record. I can't think of a single season he's had that was worse than this.
He got his proverbial doors blown off.
23-7 in qualifying. I mean, I think on Grand Prix it was 20-4 in Leclerc's favour. That is an arse whooping by any measure. Now, don't get me wrong. On a good day, Lewis was good enough to run pretty much side by side with Charles. And look, I looked at things like average qualifying gap. Hamilton was on average 2.5 tenths behind Charles. It's not dreadful, but when the midfield is that close, and let's be frank, Ferrari on a bad day was a midfield team, that can be the difference between making it to Q3 and getting eliminated in Q1, which is what Hamilton did in his final 4 qualifying sessions of the year. I'm chucking in Qatar sprint qualifying here, but you get my point. The last time someone did that was Giancarlo Fisichella back in 2009.
No, see, he didn't actually do that, because he wasn't bounced in Q1 that many times in a row. It was only twice.
Exactly, and this is the problem. I don't think his fan base or Ferrari were prepared for the teething problems that would happen for Hamilton on the way in, because they gave it the big one. They gave him the big dramatic Italian mob gangster photo shoot with a Ferrari F40 in front of Enzo's house with 8 open windows and doors, signifying this is going to be the push for number 8.
Yep.
Mr. Harrison.
They gave it the big one. You cannot do that and then tell us that this was meant to happen. This is a failure on all fronts by Ferrari.
Mr. Harrison.
Mr. Buckley.
You do not hire Lewis Hamilton to be a midfielder also ran.
You don't hire him to be a number 2 either.
No. It just didn't go well. And the problem is that the technical team that produced this car is producing next year's car. The power unit, the signs out of Ferrari, the rumblings is that it might be a little bit off the boil to start with. I mean, we've already heard rumors out of people like ESPN that they're not even going to offer Lewis a contract next year. You're going to give him the Sebastian Vettel treatment. Nope, we're not even going to hand you a contract.
They have Behrman ready to go. They don't need Lewis to be there if he's just going to be an also-ran midfielder, relatively speaking, compared to Charles. They've got their number 1. Charles Leclerc is good enough to win a championship if the car is there.
Yeah, and a lot of the discussion on the year was about the adaptation to this car. I don't know how well anyone coming in blind would have adapted to this car, but also you were the statistical greatest racing driver in the history of Formula One.
And he's never liked the ground effect race to begin with, even when Mercedes was good. When things were good in Mercedes.
Sure. I don't think that's an excuse, because his 2022 and 23 seasons were pretty damn good anyway.
I was going to say, he demolished
Russell. Did he win anything out of those?
No,
did he win anything out of those?
Did anyone win anything out of anything in 2023 other than Red Bull?
But Hamilton
has got one win on the board, and it's like the hat he'll hang his entire career on.
It's a perfect storm of a mediocre Ferrari car, Hamilton not getting to grips with ground effect regulations, and he's old. I don't think he's demotivated. I just think he's old now.
And the problem is, Charles Leclerc is probably 1B to 2 fastest driver on this planet or any other over one lap.
And that was always going to be the problem, right?
That was always going to be the problem.
Charles Leclerc was never going to lay down for Lewis Hamilton, right? This was always going to be a clash of, like, who gets number one billing. And the only way it was going to play out was on the track. And right now it's advantage Charles Leclerc unless proven otherwise in a wildly different way than it went in 2025.
But RJ, here's the thing as well. Leclerc is getting to experience the Max Verstappen 2020 experience, where he doesn't really have anything to do. He's not really racing anyone in front of him all that much, and he's not really racing anyone behind him all that much. So what he's doing is managing races better than ever. Because the qualifying was always going to be a bloodbath.
Yeah.
Leclerc was dominant in this team in race trim. He was phenomenal in race trim. Even as it seemed like every other weekend, the Ferrari would get to the last 15 laps of a race and just die.
This has to be the year for Ferrari. Anything less than...
They're going to blow this team up.
Anything less
they're going to blow this fucking team up.
I think that's what's going to happen, because I think anything less than immediate title contention and heads are going to roll.
And it ain't going to be John Elkann, because he owns the whole lock, stock, and barrel. Fred Vasseur, rightly or wrongly, is under immense pressure to deliver, even if this all hasn't been his fault.
I stress this, I say this, Fred Vasseur is one of the all-time good people in Formula One, and I don't say that about people often in this sport.
He's been successful almost everywhere else he's been.
He's been excellent everywhere else. He's one of the most likable team principals I've ever seen in Formula One. He seems like a genuine good person. From everything I've ever heard or been told about Fred, he will be fed into the incinerator if this doesn't work out. And it would break my heart, because the man lost his mother this year as well. The man's had a hard fucking year on and off the track. I would hate to see that man let go, but man, like he's in a very losable situation here.
I think this is as classical Ferrari as we could possibly get, where we are in range of this being Ferrari's longest ever championship drought. We are T-minus 2 years. 3 years, actually, if you count the constructors in 08. We all know what McLaren was doing, putting Heikki Kovalainen in the number 2 seat there. It's like John Elkann effectively telling his drivers, who were very vocal this year about how piss poor the car and the team were, to effectively shut up and drive. It's just the same old Ferrari. It's the same old Ferrari, and you know what it is? There's one instance in the last 40 years of that not being the case, and it's when Schumacher and Braun came in and just put all their own people in place. And it was Red Benetton with infinite money.
Sometimes that's enough to create a dynasty that makes you forget about everything else that came before it.
And everything since has been either not quite good enough or what they were this year, which was the worst thing that Ferrari can be in this sport. They're just irrelevant. Did Ferrari matter? You know, Ferrari mattered one time this year.
Yeah.
In the finale, when Charles Leclerc was the only factor that could have stopped Lando Norris from winning the title. And Lord knows he tried, but there was nothing more to give from that car.
Trey, it's like you say, you know, if somebody is coaching to try and save their job, they probably already lost it in a matter of thinking. Like,
I just think it'd be... if the technical team lays this much of an egg, it is not on Fred Vasseur.
I hope to see Charles Leclerc win a championship, and I hope it's in red. By the way, Spencer, if you're listening, I appreciate the gumption of picking Charles Leclerc to win the world title.
Insane man.
I know it blew up spectacularly, but that's why I respect him a lot. Maybe we'll get him next time. Now let's move on to Oracle Max Verstappen Racing.
Yes, Oracle Red Bull Racing, third in points, 451. Somehow only 18 points away from second place of the way it all shook out in the end. Mostly because of one man. You all know what we're going to talk about very shortly. Head-to-heads, lol. Verstappen 26-1 against Yuki Tsunoda in the 28 sessions they were together, and the largest average qualifying gap of any pairing in the field. On average, Max was, deep breath, 7 tenths on average quicker than Yuki Tsunoda over the course of the year. Not pretty. 25-2 in races they shared. Verstappen, second in the championship, 421 points, just 2 away from glory. Led the league in wins with 8, led the league in pole positions with 8, 2 sprint wins, 15 podium finishes. We'll get to him later. Yuki Tsunoda, 17th in points with 33, 7 top 10s, a best finish of 6th. Sadly, as of today, no longer on the grid. He'll be Red Bull's reserve and test driver for next year. But really, it's hard not to start with this being the end of an era. The 2 most prominent people in Red Bull racing history are gone. Christian Horner, as mentioned earlier, was relieved of his duties as CEO after the British Grand Prix at Silverstone. Helmut Marko, last about just under 2 weeks ago now, by the time this goes out, was released by Red Bull Racing. You know, it was said to be amicable. Helmut Marko has since gone on the record with Dutch media and said that was absolutely not the case. But either way, the man who formed the Red Bull Junior team as we know it, I think since going all the back to, I think, to 1998 or something like that, he's now gone. It's the end of an era.
All the players from the big power struggle of 2024, everyone lost because everyone decided to fall on the same sword.
That's really funny, isn't it? Right, this whole family feud comes to end with neither side winning in the long term. Yes, Marko got a bit of a short-term victory when Horner was relieved of his duties, but how long did that last? Half a season? If that. It didn't last longer than 2025. And within all of that, you have Max Verstappen being the class of the field in a car that was not equipped to win a championship for about the first 3/8 of the season, the first half of the season, the first 5/8 of the season.
Let's call it the first 5/8.
Matched up against Yuki Tsunoda, who was not good enough, combined with being put in a position where he was not being put in a position to succeed.
I'll say this much off the top. It's almost like it's funny in a Macbeth sort of way that the 2 most prominent people in Red Bull racing history ultimately was released and told to fuck off, ultimately because they both chased absolute power in what is, by any measure, one of the greatest F1 teams that has ever been assembled. A team that has won 14 championships in just 20 years of existence. That is an unbelievable accomplishment by all involved at Red Bull and Red Bull Racing to get them to this point. And Horner and Marko are both dead in terms of their F1 legacy because of the fact they chased the bag too hard. It's a new era at Red Bull Racing, and it's going to be fascinating to see what Lauren Mekies does at the helm. But we can talk about the here and now for a minute, because that car was badly off the boil the first 2/3 of the year, really. There was a car that Max was able to will to 2 victories, one in Japan off the back of McLaren botching their quali laps, and then Imola through arguably the F1 pass of the year when he went round the outside of Piastri into turn 1. But it was the final third where Max just went into overdrive on this one, and yeah, like, we're talking about it now. Just how good was Max Verstappen this season? Holy shit.
I think there are a lot of people, if you are not convinced by this point that Max Verstappen is not just a benefactor of the team that he drives with and the cars that they give him, you will never be convinced, because this was his Michael Schumacher in 95 campaign, I'd say. Maybe his 98 Schumacher campaign. Well, he didn't win it, but he came very, very close when he really, really shouldn't have.
It feels like the Schumacher in 98, because for a very similar kind of storyline, the Red Bull was extremely quick but extremely temperamental, a carryover, really kind of just a B-spec version of last year's cars in a lot of ways.
This small.
Its pace was through the eye of a needle. He could put it on pole, just ragging the thing within an inch of its life. But the telltale was that to do that, he would have to go rip his front tires off the rim. And so in race trim, McLaren would just shoot them to pieces. Until a two-parter, the greatest front-wing upgrade in the history of Formula One, coupled to an enormous floor upgrade between Zandvoort and Monza. And suddenly, Max leans forward in the chair. And he reeled off nothing but wins and podiums for the rest of the season.
Like, Max Verstappen, after the summer break, the final 10 rounds of the year, went 10 straight races on the podium. 6 of them were victories. His average finish in those final 10 rounds was 1.5. It was an unbelievable run. He gained 110 points on Oscar Piastri in the final 10 rounds of the year. He gained 68 on Lando Norris to just fall short of the World Championship by 2. Look, there's a reason why Autosport, despite not winning the title, made him their number 1 driver of 2025, because my man Kevin Turner, who edits the magazine, summed it up best in the mag itself. It's the most complete season Max, I think, has ever had in Formula One for sheer overall quality of driving. He was incredible. He basically made McLaren shit themselves in the final third by sheer aura and force of will.
Yeah, and the blemishes, barring two really, were Red Bull had a couple weekends where they looked like midfielders quite early on. Bahrain, they were piss poor. Monaco, he put it in 4th, and that was a pretty outstanding drive. Britain, where they gambled the house on basically putting a Monza spec bodywork package on the car. It worked in qualifying, and then it poured in the race.
Whoops.
But that's burying the lead. People will point to Spain. And Spain, where Red Bull, it's like the best and worst of Red Bull all at once in that race, of a car that just wasn't quite able to keep up with McLaren. They tried everything strategically in the book to try and get around McLaren. They would get ahead, they would fall behind. And then they're forced to bolt on the hard tires. He makes a mistake on the restart. George Russell inflicts the rules of engagement type of pass, and in being told to give the position back, Max blows his top. This ultimately cost Max about 8 points?
9.
9 points.
He was set for 5th. If that race plays out the way it does, he ends up 10th after the 10-second time penalty, so he gets 1 point for it. It's a minus 9.
It's a minus 9. He loses it by 2. But, at the same time, I don't think that would have ended up mattering.
I don't think so, because, like I said, we talked about, if you're going to play the game of individual highlights, you could easily just say the last round in Abu Dhabi, McLaren tells Piastri to step aside for Norris, and that's
I think it's the last two.
Yeah. Yeah,
the last two, where if you give him back those 9 points in a perfect world, which we don't live in, obviously, like, if you give him back those 9 points, he's ahead of Oscar in Qatar, regardless of if Oscar wins the sprint or not. And if McLaren just favor Lando in that situation with someone right behind him in the championship, well, one, they don't commit strategic suicide out on track with that safety car call. And if that's the case with how fast McLaren were, they probably end up winning that race. I think if you give Max another 15 to 18 points on the season, then McLaren would not have been able to counter that with team orders.
Ironically,
sadly.
He probably loses 15 in Austria when Antonelli took him out on the opening lap.
Well, the thing is, Antonelli was not something in Max's control.
Indeed.
But I don't think getting that 9 points back, it doesn't put Max back in control.
And even then, I would argue that the majority of the responsibility in Spain falls on GP, because he makes the wrong decision to tell Max to give the positions back, because, as the FIA would later go on to investigate and prove, George Russell loses control at the apex and forces Max off track. They said that was no further action because Russell's pass was not legal, because he lost control at the apex. He locked up going into the corner. So they didn't need to give the position back, and if GP doesn't tell Max to give the place back, ride it out, I don't think Max loses his top. So for me, I still maintain a better managed pit wall makes the whole situation avoidable. So I don't like considering Spain an element of why Max didn't win the title, because I don't think the full responsibility is on him.
What it ultimately comes down to is that there was potentially way more points lost out of how narrow that Red Bull's window was for the first 5/8 of the season than at Spain. How many of those second places early in the season, Australia, Saudi Arabia, Canada, could have turned into wins? How many of those fourth places could have turned into podiums? China, Miami, Monaco. What if Max Verstappen just qualifies well in Hungary?
Well, the thing is, that was also a strategic bomb by Red Bull, because they gambled and it did not work out because cars could not pass worth a damn at Hungary. I think that's ultimately the correct look at it, is that Red Bull, from their development funk of last year when they hit a dead end with that car, it took until Zandvoort for them to really get out of that funk this year. They ended this season with what really is, once again, the fastest car in F1. They, other than Qatar, they pretty much beat McLaren's block off multiple times down the stretch this year. Still not the easiest car to set up in the world. He overturned 115 points at McLaren.
Yeah.
That is fucking ridiculous.
In a car that wasn't the obvious
wasn't
number
overwhelmingly better.
No,
when it was
like
better.
there's still a couple of rounds in there that George Russell in Singapore, for example, and Len Norris did win in Brazil and Mexico. He won them comfortably, given the circumstances. So I can't say here with absolute faith that Red Bull had the definite number one car after the fact. It was still up for debate on that one.
They still needed to actually put in the work. Setup-wise.
For sheer force of will, Max was absolutely insane. Yeah, it was a run that was worthy of winning the World Championship, quite frankly, and he was very unlucky not to win it. And even without it, this is one of the greatest Formula One drivers we have ever seen. This is a man that's got 70 wins at 28 years of age, and it reminds me of like middle of his run of dominance Mercedes Hamilton, where it's just, we know he's the best driver in the world and there is no debate at this point. I think even Lando and Oscar are sitting there in acknowledgement that yeah, Max is just better than them right now, and it took McLaren throwing the house, a 14-win car over the course of the season, to just barely beat Max by 2. And they were by a country mile the best team in Formula 1 this year. Says it all, really.
Yeah, I think the other element that Spain plays in all of this is that was one of the catalysts for the Thai side of the team to basically just let Horner fall on his sword. And when they brought Mekis in, one of the biggest things that they did do was, one, keep 2025 going when they were just going to can 25 and focus on next year.
Right.
What effect that will have on the what ends up being the RB22 Ford, we do not know. What we do know is that one of the biggest narratives around Red Bull for the last 7 years or so has been they build the car around Max. Nah, Max can drive an insanely set up car with the thing slammed forward on the nose. And that's just going to be fast. That's why Schumacher was so fast. Is he can just drive a car on the front wing. One of the best things that Mekis did to break rank from how Horner ran the team from a technical perspective is let Max do the setups. Let Max tell them what he needs from the car, rather than just focusing everything on the simulator. And that, combined with the front wing, combined with the floor development that they did, that, again, cured the missteps from 23 that reared their head in 24. Mekis is a huge element in why this team took the forward step they did mid-season. I'm not sure Horner is canned when he is, if Spain doesn't happen as well. It almost is like the most necessary of evils.
It's amazing what happens when you get the Ferrari off of you. We saw that with Binotto and his new role at Audi, and now we see it with Mekis at Red Bull. I
thought he was doing a good job at RB as well.
He was a very good team principal at Racing Bulls, and he's continued that at Red Bull. It feels like a new team with Mekis in charge over there, and he wasn't perfect.
Dre, you look at this, the end of season photographs with that team. Max is the only one left of the big hitters.
Yeah.
The 2023 Dream Team is gone.
Like I said, it's the end of an era. This really is a new Red Bull Racing, and it's going to be fascinating to see with their own powertrains, with the Ford tie-up, and with Isaac Hadjar there as well, a very talented youngster. It's going to be fascinating to see how this is going to end up.
I know one other part of that car that was doing its job all year. They don't call it the Honda Motor Company for nothing. That thing was still a missile in a straight line.
Absolutely.
Right. Given that Yuki Tsunoda was the most recent driver in the Red Bull second seat to not even score a top 5 finish because Pierre Gasly at least got a couple of those, what on earth would success for Isaac Hadjar look like in 2026 when we know that Max Verstappen is the driver that he is, when we expect that Red Bull might take a step back because they're going to new power units? What on earth does that look like for Hadjar to somehow be successful enough?
Well, we got to wait and see what the yardstick of what this Red Bull is going to be in Max's hands first, because we just don't know where they're going to sit until we actually run this shit. But if he's within 3 or 4 tenths of Max, he's regularly in Q3, and he's a regular point stuffer. He doesn't make mistakes. I think that's more than enough. This is a team that was more than content with Sergio Perez for a good 2 or 3 years out of sheer goodwill because of how...
we cooked the shit out of them. A lot of y'all people cooked the shit out of them for that.
Yeah, like Sergio Perez was at least good enough to be a clean-up man when Red Bull was at the peak of its ascendancy. I'm not saying Hadjar has to be that. He's just got to keep it clean, be quick where he can, and just try to get as close to Max as possible. If it's within 4 tenths, I think he'll be fine.
Well, I think what people really want out of Red Bull is to have a Rosberg to Verstappen's Hamilton, and I don't know if they're going to get that.
The problem is, I'm not sure
while.
that person exists, because Max has turned into the greatest teammate killer of our time. He looks like Schumacher versus Max's own dad, and everyone else they put into another Benetton. Anything that wasn't a Benetton wearing a 1 was just getting destroyed in the mid-90s. And the aggravation I have with just everything that went down with Yuki this year, because I do like Yuki.
Yeah.
I still look at the decision to put Lawson in over him last year, and I go, that makes no sense. Which meant
Tsunoda was the obvious pick.
Which meant he had no preseason. They put him in at Japan, and actually the pace in bursts was not bad. There was a couple points where he got within about 3.5 tenths of Max.
And that's fine.
The problem was that the end results were very rarely fine. The bigger thing for Tsunoda, and this is all on Yuki, he gets upgrade parity when Red Bull brings their first big upgrade in Imola. And then he threw that car at the Italian countryside, first time of asking in qualifying.
It just
that put
wasn't
him on the
good.
It put him on the upgrade back foot for the rest of the year. And you need all the help you can get against Max. He didn't have that help, and he didn't help himself.
That's right. It all in some people's eyes
just
justifies the decision they made at the start of the year not to pick him at the start of the year. But then again,
Lawson was crashing the car every session.
Nobody won out of that decision, as it turns out.
Yeah, everyone lost. I am just
Except
concerned
for Max Verstappen.
Max, who... One of the things about Max as well at the end of the year, I do like how he's kind of turning into Tony Stewart with the media.
It's like, fuck this.
Dude, fuck that. I'm just upset we didn't crash more cars. I feel like that's what we're here for.
Yeah, he's become the master in basically being no-nonsense shithousery with the media because he knows exactly how to play them like a fiddle at this point because...
Wind-up merchant.
Yeah, he's a wind-up merchant, and I know with Max it's not personal. I know he gets along with people like Tom Clarkson, who does a very good job fronting F1's media sessions and their official podcasts and what have you. But he knows that he has the power to wind people up, and he knows he's going to rub people a certain way. And I'm not going to lie, it's entertaining. Like, it's funny.
The bigger thing that I look at it with it, like, I like that Max is as comfortable as he is just going, what would a 5th title actually do for me? Everyone knows what he is as a driver. Yeah. He's like, I got 4 more of those at home. He keeps one on a cooler next to his sim setup where his stepdaughter slaps him in the face with a stuffed animal like 4 times a week.
It's very Lando Norris of him.
Yeah, like we didn't learn anything new about Max this year. He is still Chief him.
He's still the best racing driver on the planet, and he is still remarkably okay with that. He's somehow the most relatable driver in Formula One, despite being one of its greatest. It's a fascinating parallel, and that is a man who won 4 titles before he turned 27, and yet at the same time is also remarkably chilled about the fact that he is already one of the greatest to ever do it. And that's actually arguably more powerful than acknowledging how great he is that he just acts like a normal guy. And that's quite scary for someone who is remarkably content with where he is in F1 and where he is in life. It's actually annoyingly quite refreshing.
Yeah.
Right. While he turned out that relatively normal and down to earth, at least off the track, given everything about his upbringing, which is extremely well documented.
Maybe the most relatable Nepo baby that there is, but when you're that successful, we shed the Nepo baby. That's just a legacy driver right there.
Everything that Max has done is in spite of what his childhood was, not because of it. I need to make that point very clear. Mercedes.
Oh, yeah. Mercedes is interesting.
Second in the Constructors, 460 nice points. Russell 25.5 in qualifying, 26.4 in races, dominant head-to-head margin there. I think he had about 2 tenths on Antonelli on average. I think it was 2.5, 3 tenths on average on Kimi over the course of the year. George Russell, 4th in points, 319, 2 wins, 9 podiums, 2 pole positions, 3 sprint podiums. Antonelli was 7th on points on 150. He had 3 podiums of his own, including that big sprint pole in Miami, the youngest ever Formula One pole sitter of any kind. I think Mercedes were clearly the best of the, shall we say, all-round teams in Formula One, and not named the McLaren, because they've clearly got a passable car, a car that on its day is good enough to win, right? And I'm going to cut to the chase. George Russell was a monster this season. Like, holy shit. Like,
he took wins off the big 3.
He took all the talk of the last 2 years of getting turfed out for Max Verstappen very, very seriously.
He took 2 wins off of Piastri, Norris, and Verstappen this year. And given how much... He was the only other winner besides them.
Yeah, he was the only other winner this year. Only 4 men won a Grand Prix this season, and George won multiple of them against the strongest Power 3 we've seen in Formula 1 since probably 2016. Jeez.
It's another year of Mercedes being kind of weird. Because last year, what was the W15 but the ultimate cold track merchant? You put it on a cold track, best car in F1, 30-second win. And this year, it feels like they were the bystanders watching Max do his best and McLaren run roughshod over the field. But Lord, did George Russell try.
Comfortably his best season in Formula 1.
Oh, not close.
I will go one further and say I think he was the second best driver in Formula 1 this year, pound for pound. Like, the thing with George is, and the stat that jumps off the page to me, is when I look at the advanced numbers, because there is a few of them that I love to go to. Average finish is one of them. Do you know what George Russell's average finish was this year, despite being in arguably the third best car for most of the season?
I want to say, what, 4.5?
You're spot on. It's exactly 4.5. The world champions...
Damn, I was just guessing.
Yeah, it was exactly 4.5. The average of the world champion, Lando Norris, was 4.3.
That's pretty good. That's really good from George Russell.
Yeah, he was...
He had the highest floor of any driver in the sport this year.
Well, not just that. It was pretty much as simple as this. Whatever the Mercedes has to give, George Russell is getting it, with like 2 exceptions on the year. He was ripping blood from a stone. The only other person who I would put in the ballpark for second, and I have him just behind, is Charles Leclerc for basically doing the same thing. But the Mercedes was a little better, and Russell was just a little higher floor there.
I was going to say, the point is that if you have Charles Leclerc or George Russell second or third, you kind of have to have the other in that position for that very same reason. The logic follows itself. George Russell had 2 mediocre weekends all year. Monaco, where you had Monaco, which wasn't his fault. We had to start down the order because
forgot the rules.
The team forgot the rules, and 2, his car died in qualifying, so he was starting down the order anyway and couldn't make progress because it's Monaco. You've got Silverstone, where the team gambled on slicks early and it didn't work out because Mercedes understandably went for the home run, didn't get it. And then Brazil, where he finished 4th, and only because Kimi Antonetti had his best weekend in Formula 1 and was phenomenal that weekend and was in second.
And Russell also had brake issues in the race, down the stretch, that race as well. So even that one, can't really put all on him.
And again, 4th is still perfectly acceptable for Mercedes for where they were that year. It's still an excellent weekend. It's just Kimi was phenomenal that year. That is George Russell's season. You know what we never talked about with George Russell?
Do you remember any time where, like, where we would try and think, like, George Russell's going to run to the side of somebody, and, like, it happened? It's a lot rarer this time around.
He was kind of just hanging out alone for most of the year.
Yeah, he was just extracting whatever he could out of that car, and that was what that car did. It's that simple. George was he was the only person who didn't have a DNF all year in F1, and he was only 2 shy that Monaco weekend we talked about, where he ended up 2 laps down because of the weird nature of the mandatory 2-stopper and the leapfrog strategy to try and make space for 3 pit stops. That was the only racing laps that George Russell didn't complete all season.
Only race he was out of the points as well. Every other one he was at minimum in the 10th points. He even got it. He even got it in the points in that horrible weekend in Silverstone, when again they tried the home run and did not work.
Still finished 10th.
Yeah, still got 10th out of it, and had good speed. Just got dealt a bad hand.
It's the only reason why, and minor spoiler, like Autosport had him second in their top 50 this year, which I know pissed off a lot of people because of Alex Palou being third. George Russell's season was so good, I can understand why they put him there.
Well, Autosport doesn't like IndyCar. Even as head of the Alex Palou fan club, I am fine with that.
I'm
He
completely
was
fine
second
with
last
that.
year. It's two top 50 podium finishes. We take those. So with all that said about George Russell, we know how good he's been. We know how he maximized the car. Did Kimi Antonelli do a good enough job in year one?
Yes. I think with any rookie, there's going to be teething problems, and he had a lot of hype and a lot of promise pushing this kid to the moon straight away, and I always felt like that was unfair, and I felt like they were doing wrong by him to shove him into the limelight as much as they did. I'll give them this. Like, he's a bit erratic, there were some mistakes, there was some questionable racecraft at times. When he's on it, he is phenomenal. Like, that Brazil weekend, he was unreal. He was unlucky not to win the sprint race, and then was second in race trim. The Miami sprint pole position, the third in Canada. The ceiling on this kid is remarkable. Like, the floor needs work, but
The floor needs
you
work.
You could see why Mercedes bumped him up so quick, because you could see what the promise is here.
Well, and the thing is, as well, is it is a little bit hard to evaluate a big chunk of his season. Stop me if you've heard this one before, but Mercedes did not understand this car for a great portion of this year. And they put a rear suspension change on this car to try and open up setup avenues, and it wrecked Kimi's confidence in the car. They binned this because they realized it was actually a genuine downgrade. Soon as that, it took him a couple races to build up that confidence back up, and he was just very solid the rest of the year. The biggest complaint we can levy against him is that he wasn't George Russell, who was incredible this year.
He wasn't George Russell, but he is also the most hyped rookie to come into the sport since Lewis Hamilton.
Sure. He also is in his first year in a car that was wildly all over the place in that
temperamental
context. It's just another ground effect Mercedes that, hey, we were fast this week. We don't know why.
With that said, 2026, they didn't understand their ground effect era, but apparently they might have one of the best packages to start the season. We have not seen any of these 2026 cars meet
The
tarmac
regulations
yet.
only got truly finalized today as of recording.
Today.
It mainly nomenclature, not the actual technical stuff.
Right.
I digress.
What
They
is
have a really fucking good driver lineup going into a new regulation set.
Yeah.
This is Mercedes on a powertrain transition. Bet everything on them. I don't care if it's 4th and 30. You bet on it. The question mark is going to be the car.
Yep.
The car, they started this year with what I considered the most interesting car in F1. But I also had to say on our season preview, interesting does not mean good. It was aight.
It was decent.
But it was not. But when the Red Bull was on it, Red Bull shot them to pieces. The McLaren could be off of it and still shoot Mercedes to pieces.
It's a good base. It's okay. I think they will take
hard
second.
Disagree. Second is cool. It was also against a 1-car team with Red Bull and a 1.2 car team with Ferrari. And honestly, I don't even think Ferrari brought a car this year. They brought a sled painted red. They got to understand their cars better. This was an issue actually right before the start. Like, 2013 is when they actually started understanding why they were good and bad at certain places.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to hand McLaren their engine drawn on a napkin until preseason testing. They are going to sabotage the shit out of McLaren's installation, as they should as the factory team.
Sure.
And that might be their only bet to actually come out superior and ahead of McLaren going into next year.
Because I still kind of trust McLaren, what they've been building over the last few years to Mercedes.
Sure.
But if Mercedes does hit it out of the park, we know George Russell will probably be a title
win the
favorite.
championship.
George Russell will at least be odds-on favorite to win the title. I
George
wonder
Russell,
how
ready.
close.
Yeah. He's
how
ready.
close does Kimi? How many races does Kimi Antonelli need to win then to avoid being turfed out like Jensen Button was at Williams?
They're not Red Bull. They're not ruthless like that. Like they gave Valtteri Bottas 6 seasons there. Like they are not ruthless like Red Bull. Yeah, maybe they should have
They're
got
going
rid
to
of him
ditch him for
earlier.
the other guy. They would ditch Russell in that scenario, which would be incredibly stupid.
Don't get me wrong. I think the opportunity cost of what Mercedes is now for me has them at a point where they don't need Max Verstappen anymore. Because they have someone who is a marginal 2B in terms of quality of F1 driver now at this point where Antonelli's ceiling and promise is worth investing in, quite frankly, and they have a top 3 driver in George Russell. As you guys have said a minute ago, the way I see it, George Russell is ready to win a championship. He just needs the car.
Ducati didn't need Marc Marquez, but it's really nice that they got him, huh?
We shall see.
It's always nice, but you
McLaren.
don't need the luxury picks. And now we get to McLaren, your 2025 Formula One World Champions. Lando Norris, your world champion. Oscar Piastri, third in the standings. Boy, was this, if nothing else, it was an interesting year for the world champions, despite them being so dominant for large stretches of it.
Joint earliest Constructors' Championship win in Formula One history. They did it with 5 rounds to spare. And that's despite the fact they only won 14 Grand Prix on the season. I know it's weird to say only 14, but given what we've seen from Red Bull and other teams in recent years, that's actually quite a low overall number. It's the
What it
second
looked
highest.
like with McLaren for most of the season. We thought it was going to be fucking 19.
Well, they were trending towards a 1,000 point season in the Constructors until the back half, where, again, they basically they almost Van der Velde the entire driver's standings, if you know what I mean, towards the end of that year. I mean, 833 points is the second highest Constructors' point count in history. Again, a little bit of that is the fact that we now have effectively 30 races, 24 Grand Prix and 6 sprints. The format helps them with that. I mean, head-to-head, they were actually dead level in qualifying overall, 15-15. I think Norris was ahead on average, but only by about half a tenth. It was the closest matchup of any driver pairing on the grid. You're shocked, I know. Norris was ahead 17-13 in races. As mentioned, Norris was 13 points better than Piastri over the year, but that was enough to make the 26-year-old Brit the latest Formula One world champion. 7 wins, 1 sprint win, 7 poles, 18 podium finishes. He actually led the league in podium finishes with 18. No one else had more than him. Oscar Piastri was third with 7 wins, 1 sprint win, 6 poles and 16 podiums. It's going to be a tale of 2 seasons for McLaren in the sense of they, from a constructor's point, they did exactly what they needed to do. They have the best team in Formula One. The car was great. Not all-time great, but still more than devastating enough to win the Constructors at a canter. Partly because of that, partly because they have the best driver lineup in Formula One now. They're the floor
two-car team at the front of the field.
Pretty much. I mean, like, if Oscar Piastri is your number 2 by proxy, you're doing all right, quite frankly. And they executed for the first 2/3 of the year, no doubt about that, and that was enough for them to win the Constructors. But you can't talk about this year without talking about papaya rules and talking about the way they ran this team, which was a fucking mess. Which, it feels like they're a team that is not ready to win, despite the fact that they ended up winning.
They needed every ounce of how good that car was. With the way they made an active choice to conduct their Drivers' Championship battle. They were so committed to fairness and happy fun times that they were willing to compromise on track for off-track issues like pit stops, like alternate strategies, like affecting qualifying orders due to internal consequences on how the drivers behaved. None of this is a slight on either of their drivers. Who both had very, very good years albeit I would say both still with room to improve. Less so for Lando, because I didn't get to actually be on the... someone wiped out a pole and completely cut power to my street last week. I only found that out like 2 days ago. So I wasn't here for the season, the finale review.
Wonderful. I guess the thing that infuriates a lot of people about papaya rules is that everybody loves when Formula One teams that are dominant, that can win championships, don't have such a clear hierarchy that they don't let their second driver even get a sniff at the title. They like it when they have their two drivers fighting on equal terms and keep their hands away from it. As long as you don't hit each other, we'll keep our hands off. But McLaren managed to
a whole different level.
Yeah, McLaren was doing team orders to get that close championship final between teammates, and it made it in a way that's so messy that a lot of people are going to have hurt feelings about it when they really shouldn't in an ideal situation.
Well, and the problem is that McLaren simply refused to accept reality until they had no choice. Because you can pull whatever you want if you're that dominant over everyone else. They were. Except for the guy wearing the number 1.
It's actually amazing that, and as Jason points out in our chat, they had the ideal scenario. 2 very evenly matched elite-level drivers in Norris and Piastri. You forget, they actually did hit each other in Canada.
That's right.
Norris failed to
DNF.
finish that Grand Prix. Like, you had the worst case scenario. You had the Pat Mahomes ACL tear. You had your 2 drivers hit each other. You had that happen. And yet, everybody glossed it over real quick because Lando took full accountability like he should, and everybody moved on quickly. You've had your 2 elite drivers buy into this all the way. And despite McLaren chicanery, i.e., not placating any of Piastri's stuff. And if you're a Piastri fan listening, please get a grip. I say this sincerely. Your man was not screwed, okay? McLaren not giving Piastri every request he asked for was more than reasonable. Even the Monza swap, I can see how you came to that conclusion, given the luxury of the scenario that you were in. And at worst, you were talking a 3-point swing. That would not have swung Piastri the title. Like, they had the dream scenario, and they still nearly fumbled this, because McLaren were determined. It wasn't the fact they were quote-unquote favouring a driver or quote-unquote being fair. It was that they were actively compromising their race strategy in the benefit of said fairness. And that's ultimately what nearly led them to the path of throwing the driver's title away to Max. Go on, Cam.
Qatar, for me, is the unforgivable sin of all unforgivable sins. In that the only thing that can hurt you is Max Verstappen taking big points out of you. So you made an active decision to compromise both of your cars in the name of fairness. That meant that pretty much no matter what you did for the rest of the race, unless you were a genuine 7 to 8 tenths a lap faster, and they just weren't, Max was going to take big points out of you.
They made it so much harder on themselves.
And Lando got lucky in a sense that Kimi Antonelli made a genuine error and gave him back 2 points. It wouldn't have mattered at the end of the day because they could have pulled the team orders in Abu Dhabi to invert the cars, and they were willing to do so. They did basically, they more or less compromised Oscar's start of the race to make sure that he could hassle Max. But it was just McLaren's refusal to accept reality that Max was still in play. And everything about that pit wall screamed, we're a midfield team that just so happened to produce a car that completely smacked the field for 2/3 of the season.
Yeah, it felt like
with
it was
a pair of
team
elite drivers.
It felt like it was a team that, as you said, was not mentally prepared to win. And that's ultimately what makes their season so frustrating, despite it on paper, it was so good. If It's
Look
infuriating.
at the numbers. Dre, you look at the Constructors' Championship, 833 points.
It's enormous.
Through a technical error in Las Vegas with the double plank wear disqualification, which, again, the only thing that could hurt them was losing big points to Max. So they lost maximum points to Max.
Yes, they lost 30 points that weekend in Vegas because of where their cars were placed after the final result had them both removed from it. This was a 1,000-point team.
They were very close to overturning Red Bull's 2023 total with an even more dominant car. The biggest thing I look towards with McLaren is that you do not get another crack at this.
No guarantees.
There is not a guarantee that you are ever going to produce another car that good again. And you really came close to the ultimate humiliation. Not as close as the final numbers look. Again, if you give Max the points back in Spain, if you're McLaren, you tell Oscar one round earlier, hey, you're in the support role, you pit Lando behind Max, and he wins that title with relative comfort, because he probably wins at Qatar with how fast McLaren were there. This whole season, I felt I was just slamming my head against the wall watching a team with a car that, at best, in race trim, they had periods where they were putting seconds on the field because they were so good on their tires. Almost fumble the bag.
Like I said, it's a mess. But it's an interesting mess because very few people appreciate dominance in real time. They just get sick of it.
Yeah. Max turned right back into the darling of F1 fans, other than the Hamilton fan base. Pretty much back overnight when he stopped winning. It's actually kind of funny.
Yeah, I mean, looking at their drivers real quick, Oscar Piastri had, in my opinion, as high a ceiling as anyone in Formula One this year, because, I mean, the way that he started this season was just utterly immense. He looked like for a good one. It looked
after Australia, of course.
Look, Australia was a tough start, but after that, he goes, I want to say, 14 out of the next 15 he's on the podium. With 5 wins.
He wins 5 out of the net state races.
He treats the next 15 rounds like 4th place was the floor.
4th place was lava. And
two-thirds of the year, he was the favourite for the World Drivers' Championship, and he was phenomenal for the first 2/3 of the season, where, besides Australia, he barely put a foot wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it looked like he had taken over. This was like the dream Piastri scenario where like the people's dreams are being realised that, oh wait, this might be Oscar's team after all. Like, oh boy.
But at the same time, he did have a couple ones in there. He definitely left Japan on the table in qualifying.
Yeah, he did.
Left a couple of, and the narrative that brewed through the first 2/3 of the season. Lando Norris is the bottler. He has no clutch gene. Oscar Piastri is the cold-blooded robot. He's finally in control. And then someone turned off the switch. Because he has a fine but unremarkable weekend in Monza where Max just shot McLaren to pieces in race trim. Blew their doors off. Okay, you finished 3rd. You lost 3 points to Norris. Who cares?
Azerbaijan was a fucking disaster for McLaren. And Piastri does not finish that Grand Prix.
Barely even started it even. In fact, started it too much because he false started, had a terrible opening lap, and then crashed after having already crashed that weekend twice.
He then doesn't see the podium. He then doesn't see the podium until Qatar. But the way the first 2/3 of the season went, I don't agree with it, but I can kind of understand why a lot of really zealous Australians fans who went through this with Mark Webber in 2010 might have felt like their guy got jobbed.
I don't know. We're counting this as another proxy title for Sebastian Vettel over Mark Webber, right, Dre?
I'd say so. I mean, the way I see it...
Absolutely.
I mean, the way... yes, sod Mark Webber. Anyway, the point... this is what I've been saying from day one. Piastri didn't lose the title because of a McLaren hatchet Tonya Harding inside job. Oscar Piastri lost the title because he blew too many points in key scenarios throughout the course of the year that ultimately he couldn't overcome via sheer ability. He lost 23 points to Lando Norris in Australia and 18 to Max. He lost 25 points to Max in Azerbaijan and another 6 to Norris because Norris had a very unlucky weekend of his own in Baku, and that's the only thing that saved him. He took both McLarens out inadvertently in Austin's sprint race. And then, during the run of low-grip tracks, that's Baku, Singapore, the USA, Mexico, and Brazil, he was off the boil. And it was through no shenanigans. And this is when Lando was at his best. Singapore,
that is the ultimate problem, right?
Yeah.
Max and Lando, when it came down to winning time, I describe Oscar's toolbox in year 3 of his career is not big enough. Now, time is on his side in that regard. He's in the right team. Mm-hmm. But if you watch 2024 and you add this year's McLaren pace on top of that, it's like a mirror fucking image. It's the same drop. And Lando was all over the place in that stretch last year. He was not this year. He was either on the podium or winning races.
Besides Baku, that 5-race stretch where Piastri was off the boil, Norris was 3rd, 2nd. He dominated Mexico to win by 30 seconds. Brazil, he won comfortably. And then Vegas, he would have been a clear 2nd to Max if it wasn't for the DSQ, where Piastri was down in 5th.
He would have had a near as enough dead to rights championship point at Qatar.
Yeah.
The one race where Oscar looked, all things equal, just right back to his old self was in Qatar. Aforementioned, McLaren commits strategic malpractice in the name of fairness and costs him a weekend that he looked near as enough perfect on.
Yeah.
And then mathematically he's basically done because the person who can kill you in that scenario is Max, and you protect against Max, which they did in Abu Dhabi.
Mm-hmm.
It's Oscar's bag was not quite big enough to bring this home. Because in winning time down the stretch, Max was completely fucking cracked, and Lando either was cracked or doing what he needed to do. And if Oscar's even just on the podium for most of those races, if he just podiums at home, he wins the championship. He has enough points.
If he doesn't wreck Baku, it's probably enough to win the championship.
Sure, but that's one weekend. From Baku until Qatar, he was not on the podium. In a car that Lando was either getting on the podium or winning it. Mexico being the nasty one, where Lando was probably the best weekend he's ever had in F1, and Oscar was beefing with Ollie Behrman, who admittedly had a great race.
Or Sao Paulo, where because of his spin out in the sprint and then the penalty he picked up in the race, lost 23 points to Lando that weekend.
Or USA, when the two of them clashed, and thank God it was not in the race, because if it was on the big points day, they would have lost this championship. They would not have been able to team orders at home.
Yeah, Oscar Piastri is a 9.5 driver where a 10 wins you the title, and that's okay. Honestly, if you're a Piastri fan, you're going to be fine, I promise you. But you're not there yet. And
bag's got to get bigger.
He needs to clean up the final third. Once he does that, he's there. Because everything else is great. Everything else is fantastic.
It's what you expect out of one of the most exciting prospects to come in the 2020s. This is what you expect by this point.
And just think, he could have fallen into the jaws of Alpine. The other thing is, as well, and I point this back to McLaren, time is on his side. I'm sure he will get another crack at it. But the next one is not guaranteed.
Exactly.
That is going to be... I think if he does get another crack at it, this is the rock upon which he builds his church. You came close once. Now go do it again. Just a little better. Lando Norris. Started off the year kind of messy, actually. Started off the year with the win. Did not jive with the front of this car. They changed the suspension. Lando Norris was pretty much doing everything he needed to do for the rest of the year.
Yeah, just Lando, and this is what ultimately makes his world championship so fascinating and also quite different, and I mean this in a nice way, in the sense of he was the second best McLaren for a good chunk of this championship. You know, I'd say the first half. Piastri was the quicker man. He was also very open and very honest about his struggles. He said at the start of the year, the MCL 39 was a car that was built for raw speed. It wasn't built to favour one of our driving styles. And he struggled with that for a good while. He crashed in Saudi Arabia qualifying, had to salvage 4th place that weekend. There was a lot. Obviously, he hit Piastri in Canada in one of their down days, and that was another one that got people talking like Piastri might be the guy in this team now, and Lando looked like he was the second favourite for a good chunk of the year, but when it came down to it, when it mattered most, in the back half of the year, after being 34 points back after Zandvoort when his car died and he lost 18 to Piastri in that matchup, he got his head down. And he was just, I'd say for the next 8 weekends, he was better than Piastri. He was better in Monza. He was better in Baku, obviously. He muscled him out in Singapore in what I think was ultimately a fair move. You know, he was the lead McLaren there. He was better than him in Austin.
Just be quite clear.
Yeah.
As Sebastian Vettel said, if you have a problem with that Singapore turn 1 move, don't watch racing. Just don't. Just get the fuck out of here.
Pack it up and go home. You prefer ping pong, and that's okay. Ping pong's a great sport, but it's not Formula One. No. And again, the key wins in Mexico and Brazil, and he was better in Vegas until the DQs. Lando got his head down in the clutch and was better than Oscar for 8 straight weekends. That's what won him the championship. He had enough in hand where he could let Max come to him, and they did just enough to manage that situation. But the other key McLaren matchup, Lando was better than Oscar for 8 straight weekends down the stretch, and that's what won him the title, not some grand conspiracy.
Well, the biggest thing as well, earlier in the season when Oscar was better than Lando, that was when McLaren was at their absolute best.
Yeah.
Though for the most part, the worst Norris was doing was either second or third, or the Saudi Arabia weekend where he was off the boil, still got 4th out of it.
Yeah, if you just take all the results of Lando Norris' season, to just take those, remove the context, right, which I know is always a great thing, but if you just take the results of that top line of the points table, that just looks like a normal-ass World Championship winning season.
It's the big thing is, when Lando was off the boil, it's the floor. When Lando was off the boil, he was still getting on the podium, with very few exceptions. And when
had the most of anybody on the grid.
Absolutely. And you would expect that of that car, and that is really the thing where you point to Oscar's season. Down the stretch, when he came off the boil, he wasn't just contending with Lando anymore. Max was ripping points out of them. Usually you had George and sometimes Kimi ripping points out of them. And he fell off at exactly the right time to let Lando get ahead and to let Max back into the title at all. And really, that only happened because McLaren had 2 unbelievably disastrous weekends in a row. One of which where they still got a 2-4 out of it, even though they Kobe'd that 1-2 into the trash.
They did. Lando was the flaw that McLaren needed to win the driver's title. Because you look at that season, he was only off the podium 6 times, and the times he did, there was often mitigation towards that. Like I said, Canada was his own mistake, he acknowledged that. It wasn't the most damaging day for McLaren because they were off the pace that weekend anyway. Zandvoort was a car failure, nothing you can do about that. They were unlucky with Norris in Baku. He was on a lap that would have put him on pole when the 6th and final red flag came out in that session, and they got him wrong by putting him out so early at the end of that Q3. The DQ in Vegas, Norris could do nothing about. Besides that, it's pretty much 4th place or better the whole year.
Yeah, Saudi Arabia being the one that he really botched, and he still got 4th out of it.
Good recovery.
Yeah, like...
He's always been a good floor guy.
He's always been a pretty good floor guy. You can only beat... There's no room for... I saw this written somewhere. There's no room for small print on the World Championship trophy. Lando's a deserving champion. But my God, McLaren...
Yeah.
You made this so much harder than it needed to be.
You made it so hard for your drivers to be in a position to see.
And I think that's what makes this championship feel so frustrating, even though we all acknowledge that there's, Lando is of course a worthy world champion. Like,
not on Lando at all.
And props to Lando as well, man, because like I said, this was a very different world championship. It was the first freeway title fight that we had in 15 years. And it was a different kind of winner and a different kind of driver. Someone that literally had the mantra of kill them with kindness. Someone that regretted his pettiness in previous years. Someone that was open and honest about himself, his mental health, his shortcomings as a driver, and his own mentality. He was very introspective over the course of the year. Something that we'd often deemed a sign of weakness as a racing driver. Somewhere where you would mentally shut that door because you felt like giving anybody any sort of mental fallacy was giving them strength. No, Lando won the world championship his way, and he is walking proof that you don't need to be this ruthless jackass to win a world title. And if that shatters the mold of what we expect racing drivers to be to win, I will be the first person to dress in papaya and wear a yellow leopard print helmet.
You are not repping Zach Brown in this house.
If it means we knock down the bullshit as that what a racing driver has to be to win a title, I will fall on that grenade.
Yes, you can shake hands with Donald Trump in the McLaren garage.
And no team is without sin, may I point out, because boy, yeah, not great.
Between him and between Zach and Flavio, the best of the best over there in their garages. Yuck.
Yeah, wonderful people.
Yeah, that is 2025 in Formula One.
Man, a lot happened this year.
For a championship that looked like completely fucking dead after 3 rounds. It's fun. Weird. The thing about Max, he made it fun. We got some fun out of it.
It was a 2-horse race that Max forced into being a 3-horse race via sheer ability. But we had a lot of fun on the way, and don't get me wrong, McLaren's internal frustrations and insecurities was what ultimately opened the door to make this the intriguing world title that it was.
Laughing at them was half the fun.
Of course it is, and of course there's a few, and again, it was a very high quality field when it came to overall driving this year, where I look at the race's top 20, Gabriel Bortoleto had a great rookie year and was 15th. And I couldn't even argue with the ranking because there was just so much quality in front of him.
There's not a lot of bad. There was a couple. There were not a lot of bad seasons this year.
When I looked at my rankings and did my top 10 list, there were 13 names that I had down that were in contention for a top 10 spot. I had to really rack my brains to knock it down from 13 to 10 because it was just such a high quality year. The drivers were fantastic across the board this year. The rookie class impressed a whole load of people. Behrman, Bortoleto, Hadjar, Antonelli all shined at wonderful moments this season. They all had their moments in the sun. We all forgot Gabriel Bortoleto was 6th in Hungary. Phenomenal weekend from that young man. Holy hell. Like it was an incredible rookie class. The driving was high quality. and it was a fun overall season. I enjoyed it. I think it's going to be a title fight that will age like a fine wine as the years go by, because it was so different, and I like that about Formula One season. If you can remember it for reasons, whether it be good or bad, you've done well, no matter how you want to slice. I've always said 2021 was a fantastic Formula One season, even when you consider how it ended. It was an incredible story. If you look back at how that season played out, even with the bad ending, it was still an incredible journey to get to that point, and I think 2025 will be remembered like that too. And the last note before we get out of here, because we've gone nearly 3 hours here, but it's been a great time. How do you feel about next year?
I'm always open to surprises.
It's weird. I feel like I'm backwards from everyone, where I'm not that concerned about the power unit situation, other than I think one or two companies are going to nail it and the others are not. I just think that we're just not going to get a very good racing product next year, because I think we're going to be once more into the breach of outwash dirty air, because these teams will find a way.
That's what they paid big bucks to do, is to make an embarrassment out of Formula One's new direction and how they want the cars to be designed. That's why they get paid the big bucks, man.
That is why, incredibly, that is how McLaren went from being arguably the worst team in this entire sport at times for 2 years to being by far the best for much of this final year.
Yeah, I can't really add much more to that, really. Like I said, I am concerned about the active aero. I'm concerned that the cars are not small enough as a forward step. It's good that they're 30 kilos lighter and they're a little bit smaller, but I don't think that was radical enough a step. I am concerned that they still won't be able to race each other all that hard, and as the years go by, the engineers will do their jobs and they'll add more topside downforce and do what they need to do, and then I think we'll be back where we started again, because it's just, I think it's a radical enough step after what 2025 was, and do not let the FIA and FOM videos on the matter fool you. I don't think this is they called it the most drastic regulation change in Formula One history, and I do not think that is the case. Yeah,
but they called it with the ground effect cars. Well, and it was for 2 years. The problem is that they didn't really stick with it. And we didn't really pay it that much attention while Max was dumping 20 seconds on the field on a weekly basis.
Yeah, we turned it off because Max was just so good with it. And that's not Max's fault. It's not even the sport's fault. It's just the way we as consumers of sport handle that. By the time we actually got other teams fighting at the front consistently, these cars really jumped the shark third of the way through last year and only got worse.
We're only going to have one new driver next season. We're going to have two re-entering the sport, with Cadillac finally getting a place on the grid. We're going to have a bigger grid. Cadillac, I'm fascinated. I'm not going to pin my flag in the mast and say this is going to be the greatest first year Formula One teams ever have, but I'm curious to see how they get on. I'm curious to see how they entrench themselves in the midfield of Formula One, which is so competitive.
Just don't be a terrible last.
I think that should be the minimum aim. I've got a lot of time for Graham Loudon in terms of Formula One. He's one of the few real good heads that Formula One has had in the last few years. He's absolutely built to lead this team. They've hired a lot of very sensible people. They've brought in. They've got about 800 people now in that staff. They've got two very good drivers there. I think the two best drivers that were on the board they ended up hiring in the end. They were very sensible in how they've gone about it. They could have, the whole talk about Colton Herta and that drama, I think it's the right thing. He's in Formula 2. If you see him as a long-term driver for your future, then I think they've gone about it the right way. Even if he did have a super license, I think going to F2 for a year was a wise move just to learn the European system. I think they've done a lot
better give him fucking results, man.
Don't be part of the Mechachrome lottery.
Don't be Josh Dirksen. But no, the point I'm getting at here is that I've been told their aim is 8th. And I think that's ambitious.
No.
Just don't be a terrible last, and I think that would be enough, quite frankly. That will just about do it. We are nearly 3 hours in here. I hope you've enjoyed the show. We don't normally go this long, but we do just get into our feels when we do these season reviews. We'll be taking a week off for obvious holiday-related reasons. We'll be back with the Motorsport 101 Awards right before New Year's. Well, I would just like to say before we go, thank you to everyone that's listened in, backed us on Patreon, supported us during this F1 season. It's been the longest one we've ever had to cover. It's been a marathon, not a sprint, let me tell you, but thank you for your ongoing support. We'll be back with the Haters Guide to Formula One probably in February. Of course, there'll be a little bit of talk here and there between then, but of course, thank you, of course, for your ongoing support. Have a wonderful Christmas. Enjoy the holiday season. Have a wonderful time. And, thank you so much for listening in 2025. We've got one more episode to round off the year. It'll be the 10th Motorsport 101 Awards. We'll see you then. I have to get the suit out of storage. Until then, I've been Dre Harrison. They've been Cam Buckley and RJ O'Connell. Merry Christmas, and we'll see you next time. Sayonara.
Happy holidays, y'all.
I don't really have a finishing line, honestly.